You're useless, Layla. Absolutely useless, Ronan sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. I fought back the tears stinging my eyes, refusing to show weakness in front of his family. 7 months pregnant, I had felt a wave of dizziness wash over me and needed to sit down. Instead of concern, my husband's reaction was filled with disdain. Look at her, can't even stand up straight carrying my child. Ronan's parents, Mason and Layla, remained stone-faced, offering no defense. The rest of the family averted their eyes, an uncomfortable silence filling the room. It was supposed to be a celebratory dinner, bringing the extended family together before the baby's arrival. But like most family gatherings, it became another exhibition of Ronan's cruelty towards me. Your grandchild, I corrected him sharply. Or did you forget I'm carrying your daughter? Ronan rolled his eyes. If it was a son, it might actually be worth something. Gasps rippled through the room, but Ronan seemed unfazed by his callous remark. I felt a sharp kick from my unborn daughter, as if she could sense her father's indifference. Mustering all my strength, I rose to my feet, steadying myself against the table. How dare you diminish the value of your own child before she's even born? Ronan barked out a laugh. Value? You've contributed nothing of value, Layla. I'm the one who built this family, this company. What have you done besides be a dead weight? His words cut deep, dredging up years of belittling comments, demeaning behavior I had endured. But this time felt different. A line had been crossed. As I looked around at his family's impassive faces, I realized they didn't see me as one of their own, just a vessel for Ronan's heir, at least until he decided I had outlived my use. That's when I caught Sienna's eye from across the room. My sister-in-law offered a subtle nod of solidarity, the hint of a defiant smirk playing across her lips. In that moment, I knew she recognized Ronan's manipulation for what it was, toxic and abusive. You're right, Ronan, I said steadily. I haven't contributed anything of value. I paused, letting the weight of my next words sink in. Not to you, at least. His brow furrowed in confusion as I turned my focus to the rest of the family. But this child, this daughter you've already dismissed, she is valuable. She's my future, a future free from any of you. The room fell into an uneasy hush as I mustered every ounce of conviction. I'm done being treated as worthless. My daughter and I deserve better. With that, I strode out of the room, the dull roar of Ronan's objections fading behind me. A weight had lifted, and for the first time in a long while, I felt in control of my own destiny. The path ahead was uncertain, but no longer would I accept being diminished and devalued. After years of allowing Ronan's toxic presence to define me, I was finally ready to redefine myself and show my daughter what it truly means to be a woman of strength. No more complacency or fear, only determination to rise above. In the days following that fateful dinner, I found myself questioning everything about my marriage to Ronan. His callous disregard for our unborn daughter laid bare the true depths of his cruelty and lack of empathy. This man, who was supposed to be my partner for life, had reduced me to little more than an object, a disposable vessel for producing his heir. But I was done being disposed of. That night, after leaving his vitriolic family behind, I had marched straight to the home office and began digging into our finances. What I uncovered shook me to my core. Evidence of Ronan's rampant financial mismanagement and deceit that spanned years. Hidden offshore accounts, falsified business records, illegal money trails, all carefully obscured. You lying snake, I muttered, poring over the damning documents. Just then I heard the telltale click of his study door opening. Well, look who's still awake burning the midnight oil. Ronan sauntered in, arf thinly veiled derision lacing his words. I figured you'd be too busy wallowing after your little tantrum the other night. My hands trembled with rage, clutching the financial records like a shield. You're one to talk about tantrums. Your own toddler outbursts have funded this. I shoved the documents towards him. Care to explain all this, dear husband? Ronan's eyes widened as he flipped through the incriminating pages. For a split second, panic flashed across his face before his expression contorted into one of snide amusement. Finally did some digging, did you? He chuckled darkly. I'll give you this much. You're not as big of an idiot as I thought. Don't play dumb with me, I spat. I know about the money laundering, the shady business deals, all of it. You've been lying to me from the start. Ronan simply shrugged, unperturbed. So, Those were necessary evils to get to where I am now. All you had to do was play the role of the devoted little wife. But you always did have trouble following directions. His brazen admission, devoid of any morsel of guilt or shame, was like a viper's strike to my heart. How could I have been so blind, so utterly naive to the depths of Ronan's moral depravity? You selfish, heartless bastard, I seethed, fists clenched. Did you ever love me at all? Or was I always just a means to an end in your grand game of lies and deceit? A cruel smirk played across his thin lips. Now you're catching on, but you're giving yourself too much credit, pet. You were a convenient accessory, a pretty ornament to adorn my winning success story. Nothing more. White-hot anger flooded my veins as the weight of his treachery washed over me in waves. This man didn't deserve an ounce of my loyalty or affection, not after everything he'd done, all the ways he'd betrayed and belittled me. And in that moment, I made a vow to myself and to my unborn daughter. I would bring this whole rotten edifice crashing down around him. Ronan wanted to see me as worthless, as nothing more than a means to an end. Fine, I would show him just how ruinous being underestimated could be. Rising to my feet, I met his cold stare with white-hot defiance blazing in my eyes. You're going to regret the day you ever crossed me, Ronan. I waved the documents with contempt. All of this is going to be your undoing. No more hiding, no more lies. I'm going to make sure everyone sees you for the soulless snake that you truly are. Ronan let out a contemptuous bark of laughter, seemingly unfazed by my declaration of war. But I could see the slightest flicker of uncertainty in those beady eyes of his. Good, the first embers of fear had been stoked. My path was now clear. It was time to rally my forces, gather my allies, and enact the grand unraveling of Ronan Jacobs' carefully cultivated lies. The reversal of his ill-gotten fortunes was going to be deliciously karmic, and I would be the orchestrator of his downfall, just as he had been the architect of my dehumanization. The great game of revenge was only just beginning. In the aftermath of my explosive confrontation with Ronan, I found myself at a crossroads. His web of deceit surrounding the family business was so intricately spun, taking him down would require more than just my resolve. I needed an inside source, an ally with intimate knowledge to counteract his uncle's shadowy machinations. That's when Sienna entered the picture. My sister-in-law had been sidelined by Ronan and the family elders for years, deemed too headstrong and independent for their antiquated tastes. But her marginalization shielded her from their corruption, allowing her to see the rot festering at the core with striking clarity. I reached out to her a few days after discovering Ronan's illicit financial records, suggesting we meet for lunch to catch up. Sienna, ever perceptive, seemed to sense the weight behind my request. "So what's really going on, Layla?" she asked once we were seated at a quiet cafe, her eyes narrowed with cautious curiosity. "This can't just be a social call after what went down at your dad's place." Exhaling slowly, I pulled out the now dog-eared folder and slid it across the table towards her. "See for yourself. Ronan's lies run much deeper than any of us realized." Sienna's brow furrowed as she flipped through the damning pages, her expression oscillating between disbelief and anger. When she finally looked up at me, her green eyes were blazing with righteous fury. "That arrogant, chauvinistic prick," she hissed, slamming the folder shut. I knew he was a bastard, but this is a new low, even for him. A rueful smile tugged at the corner of my lips. It felt vindicating to have someone finally see Ronan's treachery for what it was. "You and me both. That's why I need your help taking him down." Sienna cocked an eyebrow quizzically. "My help? Why come to me?" "Because you're one of the few people with a frontline view into the family's dealings," I said frankly. "With your insight into their illegal activities, we'd have a better chance of exposing Ronan's lies and watching the whole corrupt edifice crumble." For a long moment, Sienna studied me appraisingly before letting out a bitter chuckle. "Gotta hand it to you. You've got a set of steel ovaries going up against Ronan like this." Her gaze turned flinty, burning with years of repressed resentment towards my husband and his family. "I'm in. It's high time that misogynistic prick got taken down a few pegs." Relief washed over me, knowing I had a co-conspirator, and a fiercely capable one at that. With Sienna's insider knowledge combined with my evidence, we would be an undeniable force to be reckoned with. "So what's the plan?" she asked, leaning in conspiratorially. How do you want to dismantle this cancer infecting our family? A feral grin spread across my face as I laid out my initial strategy. Lawsuits, information leaks to the press, back-channel communications to law enforcement, nothing was off the table. Like Jenga pieces, we would systematically extract the foundational blocks underlying Ronan's empire until the entire decrepit tower came crashing down around him. Sienna listened intently, offering insights and recommendations along the way. Our partnership was quickly solidifying into a potent alliance, two wronged women joining forces to enact poetic justice. You know there's no turning back after this, right? Sienna cautioned once I finished laying out my plan. Ronan's going to come after us, after you, with everything he has left. I felt my daughter kick insistently from within my womb, as if lending her strength and conviction to my cause. With a resolute nod, I met Sienna's gaze head-on. Let him try, I said, cold determination lacing my voice. I'm done running scared. It's time for Ronan to learn what happens when you back a mother into a corner. Sienna flashed me a wolfish grin, her eyes glinting with feral approval. Well then, let's make that bastard pay. And with that, the gears of our intricately weaved con were set in motion. Ronan's downfall was now inevitable. He just didn't know it yet. With Sienna as my co-conspirator, the wheels were in motion to demolish Ronan's empire of lies and deceit. But exposing him wouldn't be a simple task. We needed to lay the groundwork meticulously, shoring up our defenses while weakening his position through strategic strikes. Over the following weeks, Sienna and I became a well-oiled machine. She provided insider intelligence on the family's illegal dealings, while I leveraged my financial evidence to start building a comprehensive case against Ronan. Money trails, damning documentation, back-channel whispers to law enforcement, everything was falling into place. I also began lining up allies in preparation for the inevitable battle to come. Some were easy to recruit, like Sienna's younger brother Caleb, who had long resented Ronan's boorish behavior. Others were more hesitant, but the weight of the evidence against my husband ultimately proved convincing. This is some heavy stuff, Lay, Jen, my best friend since childhood, muttered as she pored over the paper trail detailing Ronan's fraud. You know he's going to fight this tooth and nail, right? That's the plan, I replied grimly. He's going to realize just how big of a mistake it was underestimating what a woman's scorn can accomplish. Jen shook her head in disbelief. I knew that asshole was a piece of work, but money laundering? Illegal business dealings? Jesus. Her gaze turned serious as she looked up at me. You sure you're ready for the fallout that comes with taking him down like this? He could try to take everything. Your money, the baby. My hand instinctively went to my swollen belly as I felt my daughter shift inside me. That was the entire crux of this mission, wasn't it? To ensure she would never have to suffer the same toxic mistreatment I had endured. To build her a life free of Ronan's poisonous influence. He doesn't get to decide what's best for my child, not anymore, I said firmly. If he wants a war, he's going to get one, and I don't intend to lose. Jen studied me appraisingly for a long moment before giving a resolute nod. Then you've got my full support. Let's take that bastard down. With more allies rallying to the cause, our efforts started bearing fruit. A scathing expose in the local paper cast scrutiny on Ronan's business affairs. Anonymous tips triggered preliminary IRS and SEC investigations. I could sense the walls closing in around him, his confidence gradually fracturing. It all came to a head one evening when Ronan stormed into the house, his face contorted into a mask of frothing rage. You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? He snarled, violently slamming his briefcase onto the table. You had to go and poke your nose where it didn't belong. I stared at him impassively, cradling my pregnant belly. That's rich, coming from you. I'm simply bringing your shady dealings into the light. You conniving little bitch! Ronan's sudden roar made me flinch. You think you've won? That you can take everything I've built and destroy it on a whim? He closed the distance between us, his meaty hand gripping my arm in a vice-like grip. I'll bury you before you can take one more step, do you hear me? This family, this life, it's all mine. You're nothing. His spittle flew in my face as I met his crazed stare with steely defiance. We'll see about that. With a disgusted grunt, Ronan shoved me away and stormed out, leaving me to rub the spot where his fingers had dug into my flesh. I felt my daughter kick anxiously, as if she could sense the tension and rage radiating off her father. "Don't worry, sweetie," I murmured, gently rubbing my belly to soothe her. "That's the last time he'll ever get to hurt us." The game was afoot, the battle lines clearly drawn. There would be no turning back now. Ronan's ignorant arrogance had opened the door for his downfall. Soon, very soon, everything he'd schemed and clawed for would be ashes at his feet. And from those ashes, I would rise, his conquering phoenix, mercilessly guiding the path of his self-immolation. Despite Ronan's blustering threats, Sienna and I refused to let up the pressure. With our meticulous groundwork laid over the past weeks, all we needed was the right catalyst to detonate the explosive truth and bring the full force of our retaliation crashing down. That spark arrived in the most unlikely of places, a goddamn family event, of all things. It was one of those obnoxious high society galas the Jacobs clan used for thinly veiled vanity showcasing. A garish display of old money and entitlement under the guise of charity that made my skin crawl. Ronan, desperate to maintain appearances, had all but demanded my attendance, claiming it would soften the growing PR onslaught against him. So there I was, 7.5 months pregnant, squeezed into an uncomfortably tight dress and trotted out like some grotesque show pony, to help resuscitate my husband's wilting image. The hypocrisy was galling, but I played along, for now. The night itself was a sordid parade of self-congratulatory speeches and pathetic social climbing, exactly as I'd expected. I found myself growing increasingly lightheaded and nauseous, thanks to a combination of my condition and the sickeningly opulent atmosphere. "Sienna, I need some air," I muttered, struggling to conceal my discomfort. "Being around these vapid vultures is making me ill." "You just say the word and we're out of here," she replied with a reassuring squeeze of my arm. "This whole charade is utter bullshit anyway." Nodding gratefully, I excused myself from the overcrowded ballroom and made my way towards the balcony doors, each step feeling heavier than the last. I was nearly there when a grimy hand clamped around my elbow, whipping me around forcefully. "Just where do you think you're going?" Ronan sneered, his tuxedo hanging open sloppily and his breath reeking of whiskey. "Your little disappearing act is going to make us look bad." I wrenched my arm free from his grasp, defiant anger flaring. "Us? Don't flatter yourself, Ronan. You're the only one with an image to protect here, and at great cost, it seems." He threw his head back with a contemptuous bark of laughter. "Oh, spare me the self-righteous melodrama, would you? I'm doing what's necessary to maintain the family legacy." "Your legacy is mired in lies and illegal money, you degenerate." I shot back, fighting the wave of dizziness washing over me. "How many more laws do you plan to break, just to feather your filthy nest?" Ronan's face contorted in an ugly sneer. "Watch your tone when speaking to me, you ungrateful whore." The vile insult was cut off as a searing pain lanced through my abdomen, forcing me to double over with a strangled cry. Instantly, the room started spinning sickeningly as I clutched at my stomach. "Oh God, something's wrong." I whimpered through gritted teeth, panic seizing my chest. "The baby. I think she's coming." For one infinitesimal moment, Ronan's scowl slipped just enough for the briefest flicker of concern to register on his face. But it was quickly extinguished as his mask of disdain slammed back into place. "Of course you'd choose now for this pathetic drama queen act," he growled, making no move to help me. "Just another attention grab like always." I could scarcely believe his callous reaction through the haze of agony racking my body. "Ronan, please. I need help." From somewhere behind me, I heard Sienna's urgent voice calling my name as she rushed to my side. "Layla! Oh my God! What's going on?" Her eyes went wide with panic as she quickly assessed the situation. "We need to get you to a hospital now." Ronan simply stood back, arms folded across his chest, with a sneer of derision painted across his smug features. "Don't bother," he spat venomously. "She's clearly just trying to stir up another scene. Pathetic even for you, Layla." White-hot rage cut through the pain as Sienna helped me up, glaring daggers at my wretched husband. "You heard the lady. She needs medical attention, asshole!" she shouted, somehow managing to steady my trembling form. "Are you really that much of a bastard that you're going to let your own child suffer?" His only response was a disdainful curl of his lip and a dismissive wave of his hand. and in that moment, any lingering shred of affection or loyalty I might have harbored for Ronan Jacobs dissipated into the ether. Through the tumultuous storm of agony and mounting rage, one thought rang out with piercing clarity. This petty, narcissistic monster could no longer be allowed to slither through this life unchecked. Not after everything he'd done, every reprehensible betrayal and cruelty I had endured at his hands. As Sienna half-carried, half-dragged me out of that wretched gala, the air thick with horrified murmurs from onlookers, I knew with every fiber of my being that there would be no quarter given, no more playing by his rules, operating within his corrupt boundaries. From this night forward, the delicate campaign of attrition would give way to an all-out scorched earth offensive. Ronan's downfall was no longer a question of if, but when. And I would be the White Walkyrie leading the charge over the charred remains of his pathetic existence until only ash and ruin remained. After the disastrous gala where Ronan so callously disregarded my health and our unborn child's well-being, any pretense of civility between us disintegrated into acrid dust. With Sienna's help, I had been rushed to the hospital, the doctors just barely managing to halt my premature labor. But that horrific night proved to be the flashpoint, the spark that ignited the wildfire of our intricately laid revenge plot. While I recovered under Sienna's watchful care, she began systematically executing the final phases of our operation, unloading salvo after salvo of damning evidence, whistleblower accounts, and criminal documentation onto the appropriate channels. Authorities, journalists, corporate watchdogs, no stone was left unturned as she mercilessly exposed the staggering depths of Ronan's duplicity and criminality. The dominoes began falling rapidly after that, one by one, until an unstoppable chain reaction took hold. SEC investigations gave way to federal grand juries, which then triggered disastrous civil lawsuits and IRS tax fraud probes. What had once been a contained snuff operation ballooned into an all-consuming inferno that threatened to engulf Ronan's entire empire of lies. And at the center of that conflagration stood the man himself, eyes bulging with impotent rage as he watched everything he'd conned and swindled for decades up in acrimonious smoke. You meddlesome bitch, he roared, slamming his meaty fist onto the desk during one of his increasingly frequent tantrums. You've ruined everything. My life's work, our legacy. It's all ashes because of your insipid vendetta. I regarded him stoically from across the office, completely unmoved by his theatrics. You have no one to blame but yourself, Ronan. Your greed and hubris were your own undoing, not me. His beady eyes narrowed to slits as he rose from behind his desk on unsteady feet. Don't play innocent with me, Layla. I know you were behind this. All of this. He gestured wildly at the stacks of legal notices and indictments littering every surface, debris from the smoldering remains of his diseased empire. You and that venomous snake, Sienna. We simply exposed the truth you worked so hard to bury, I countered coolly. Did you really think you could run this criminal farce indefinitely without any consequences? Ronan bared his teeth in an approximation of a snarl as he closed the distance between us. Up close, I could smell the reek of cheap whiskey and nervous sweat wafting off his disheveled form, a pitiful shell of the formerly sleek, intimidating con man whose fear I had lived in for so many years. You arrogant little... His slurred insult was cut off as a tiny, mewling cry pierced the air. My newborn daughter shifting restlessly in her carrier beside me. I shot him a withering glare, squaring my shoulders protectively. That's enough out of you, not another vulgarity in front of my child. I fixed him with an icy stare, letting the unspoken threat resonate. You've inflicted enough trauma on this family. For a long, tense moment, we simply stared each other down, the snarling, feral beast backed into an inescapable corner, and the predator calmly observing its final throes. At last, Ronan seemed to wilt beneath the weight of crushing defeat clouding his gaze. Damn you, he spat bitterly, slumping back against his desk with a dull thud. Damn you and that bastard child to hell. As if on cue, Sienna strode into the room, eyes flashing as she took in the tense scene before her. Everything okay in here? Shooting Ronan one final look of disgust, I turned to face my co-conspirator and gave a tight nod. Never better. Just tying up some loose ends with the soon-to-be former Mr. Jacobs. A wicked grin split Sienna's features as she regarded her disgraced cousin with undisguised glee. Well, don't let me interrupt the reckoning. By all means, allow me to join in verbally eviscerating the sniveling husk of this pathetic, arrogant worm. She leveled a mocking glare at Ronan. Go on, you gaping asshole. What other lies do you have left to try and peddle? Ronan simply glowered in impotent rage, clenching and unclenching his fists. The faintest mutters of denial and heated curses escaped his trembling lips, but it was obvious the fight had left him. His will, his decades-long charade of power and dominance, had finally been irrevocably shattered. Turning my back to his crumpled, mumbling form, I bent down to tenderly scoop up my slumbering infant daughter, cradling her against my chest as a fierce wave of protectiveness washed over me. She was my everything now, my sole purpose, and all that mattered in this miserable world. And in that moment, I silently swore to whatever higher power that may exist, that my precious girl would never have to endure the trauma of Ronan's toxicity or fall under the twisted clutches of his family legacy. The karma he had wrought through his lifetime of malice and depravity was his cross to bear, not hers. Come on, Sienna, let's go home. There's nothing left for us among the ashes of Ronan's ruin. I spared one last contemptuous glance over my shoulder at the wretched, sniveling husk that was once my husband. This one can stew in his self-made purgatory alone. With a curt nod, Sienna fell into step beside me as we strode from the smoldering ruins of Ronan's decrepit empire. Behind us, I could feel his seething gaze burning impotently into the back of my skull. But I didn't falter, didn't dare look back. There was nothing for me amid that scorched earth, only the bright future awaiting my daughter and I beyond the caustic smoke of karmic justice. In the aftermath of Ronan's spectacular downfall, the shockwaves rippled through every facet of our lives. The legal and financial fallout had left his family's empire in irreparable ruin. Corporate entities dissolved, assets seized, reputations permanently disgraced. And at the eye of this hurricane of destruction stood Ronan himself, a bitter, sneering shell temporarily insulated by the last vestiges of his ill-gotten wealth as he licked his wounds. But even that protection was a rapidly dwindling facade. The incoming crush of criminal charges and civil litigation saw to that. I lost count of the visits from court officers, federal agents, and process servers darkening my doorstep, each one armed with another ream of subpoenas and legal filings squarely aimed at dismantling what little remained of Ronan's crumbling facade. His standard modus operandi of dismissive sneers and hollow legal threats gave way to panicked outbursts, increasingly erratic behavior, and even interventions from law enforcement when his rage spiraled out of control. "This isn't over, Layla," he roared at me through a haze of spittle during one such unhinged meltdown, eyes wild like a cornered animal. "I'll bury you in litigation for the rest of your miserable life. You'll never be free of me." Staring impassively back at him through the doorway, I didn't so much as flinch as I cradled our infant daughter protectively against my chest. "Is that so? Because from where I'm standing, it seems your options for retaliation are rapidly evaporating." "Don't get smug with me, you disloyal little cunt." Ronan's voice cracked with raw fury. "Everything I had, everything I built, it's all in ruins now, because of you. But I'll make sure you suffer just as badly before this is through. Mark my words." "Tell me, Ronan, do you honestly think threatening me is going to restore your dignity at this point?" I arched a challenging brow. "I've thoroughly dismantled any illusion of you being an intimidating presence. You're already living your worst nightmare, destitute and alone, unmourned and reviled for your reprehensible actions." He opened his mouth to retort, but I cut him off with an imperious sweep of my free hand. "Enough with the hollow bravado. We both know that deep down, you're nothing more than a coward and a charlatan whose house of cards has finally collapsed under its own weight." Pausing, I allowed the weight of my next words to resonate. "I'd tell you to give my regards to your cellmates, but something tells me they'll be able to smell the stench of your vileness a mile away." For a fleeting instant, something akin to naked fear flickered behind Ronan's eyes. But the split-second glimpse into what fragile sliver of humanity he had left was quickly snuffed out, his ferocious mask of feral defiance slamming back into place. "You'll get yours, Layla. One way or another, I'll make sure of that." he snarled. No bitch takes everything from Ronan Jacobs and gets away with it unscathed. Is that so? A wry smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. We'll see about that. With one last contemptuous glare, Ronan whirled on his heel and stormed off, the once imposing figure cutting an increasingly diminutive presence with each passing day. I watched him leave unflinchingly, the weight of victory granting me a tranquil resolve I had once struggled to find amid his toxic shadow. As the fury of his exit faded into stony silence, my daughter began fussing softly against my chest. Gently shushing her, I nuzzled her downy head and hummed a tender tune until her squirms subsided into peaceful slumber once more. In that simple, serene moment, my purpose and drive crystallized into an inviolable truth. Everything I had endured, every wound and sacrifice along this tumultuous path, had all been for her. To build a world where she would never know the corrosive touch of Ronan's cruelty or malignance. A world where her limitless potential and soaring spirit would be nurtured, not bound in chains. It was then that I made an irrevocable vow, one that would guide the next phase of mine and my daughter's shared journey towards healing and vindication. I'm going to make sure that he spends the rest of his empty days withering behind bars where he belongs, I murmured, pressing a gentle kiss to my little girl's head. And in doing so, I'll cleanse every last vestige of his poison from our lives. You'll never have to know the person I was before you came along, sweetie. For far too long, the scales had been tipped decisively in Ronan's favor, my light perpetually eclipsed by the suffocating gravity of his toxicity. But in dismantling his vile empire through ruthless, strategic strikes, the karmic rebalancing had begun. Now it was time to reject his cancerous influence entirely and reclaim my destiny as the self-actualized woman and mother I was always meant to become. No more entertaining his hollow legal threats or humoring his pathetic machinations from the sidelines. No more relics from the life he had claimed for me through subjugation and fear. It was time for Ronan Jacobs to at long last reap the full consequences of his cruelty and deception, without mercy or compromise. Only then could my new chapter truly begin, a tale authored by my own steadfast convictions, free from the shackles of his arrogance and malice. As the first rays of dawn crested over the horizon, my path forward was bathed in brilliant clarity. There would be no steering from this inexorable road, no wavering amid the scattered ashes of Ronan's shattered reality. The metamorphosis was complete. Like a phoenix born anew from the purifying annihilation of his transgressions, my wings were finally unfurled and poised to carry us both into a future of boundless possibility. And this time there was no force in existence that could extinguish the radiant flame of justice and redemption blazing before us. The days and weeks following Ronan's disgrace blurred together in a whirlwind of activity as I systematically extricated every remaining tentacle of his poisonous presence from our lives. The divorce proceedings were inevitably messy and drawn out, colored by one bad faith legal maneuver after another, as my now thoroughly disgraced ex-husband grasped at any remaining shred of leverage. But flanked by an impeccably prepared legal team and emboldened by Sienna's stalwart support, his pathetic delaying tactics proved futile. In the end, the courts had little sympathy to spare for a man whose reprehensible actions had been laid bare so publicly. Within 6 months, the divorce decree was ironclad. Full custody of our daughter, a sizable monetary settlement from what meager funds remained attachable after all the asset seizures, and every last thread connecting me to that rotting family legacy unceremoniously severed. I was finally free from the insidious manipulation, the demeaning insults and abuse, the generational cycle of toxicity Ronan had tried so desperately to entrench us both in. As the last mote of legal dust scattered, I felt an unbearable weight dissipate, replaced by an electrifying surge of possibility and newfound liberty. This life, this miraculous second chance, was ours and ours alone to author. No longer would I allow Ronan's cancerous presence to dictate the boundaries of our realm. With my meager savings and the settlement funds, I wasted no time leaving that wretched city in the rear view, desperate to put as many miles between us and those harrowing memories as possible. A quaint but comfortable home in the mountains was my chosen fresh start, a place to breathe and find tranquility among the hushed pines and crisp alpine air. Sienna came with me on that maiden voyage to my new sanctuary, helping me settle in and bearing witness to the dawning of this new reality we had fought so tenaciously to manifest. "Not bad for your stakes of the winnings, all things considered," she remarked with a roguish grin as we lounged on the cabin's spacious back patio, our contented niece gurgling happily in her arms. "Just a consolation prize, really," I replied with a dismissive wave of my hand, lazily sipping a glass of crisp white wine as I surveyed the breathtaking vista of evergreen trees rolling off into the distance. "The true bounty is the regained peace of mind, something money alone could never buy." Sienna shot me an appraising look, nodding slowly. "You've come a long way from that demure, broken-winged sparrow Ronan tried so hard to keep clipped all those years. Not sure I've ever seen a phoenix's ascension up close like this before." "Just be glad you were on my side of the bonfire when this whole warpath started," I chuckled ruefully, twisting in my seat to meet her gaze. "I shudder to think how ruthless the retribution would have been if you'd been added to the list of co-conspirators." We shared a loaded look, one that spoke volumes to the depths of conviction and camaraderie that had driven our crusade of righteous vengeance over these past months. My unlikely ally had become an indispensable confidant and comrade in arms through the harshest throes of Ronan's sinister downfall. A true sister in every sense of the word. But enough about that narcissistic shit stain. I'm over the moon just to be putting that whole cancerous saga behind me, Sienna declared with an emphatic clink of her glass against mine. "Here's to breathing that crisp, rejuvenating mountain air and never having to look over our shoulders again." "I'll drink to that," I said with a contented sigh, leaning back to bask in the warmth of the mid-afternoon sun filtering through the trees. For the first time in a long while, I truly felt at peace. Over the ensuing months, I steadily regained my footing and settled into my new normal of single motherhood, with Sienna's unflagging moral and logistical support by my side every step of the way. There were still days where I would be struck by sudden pangs of loathing or repressed trauma over all Ronan had put me through, phantom echoes of his scathing taunts and demeaning insults rattling like pinballs through my psyche. Yet with every passing week, those haunting whispers grew more faint, more powerless against the brilliant blaze of self-actualization and fulfillment illuminating my path forward. Gradually, steadily, I rediscovered the pieces of the woman I had once been, before Ronan's poisonous influence had so thoroughly leached her ambitions and self-worth down to empty husks. With my daughter as my unbridled source of inspiration and Sienna's sage guidance, the core pillars of my identity were steadily being rebuilt from the ground up. I dove headfirst into pursuing the high-stakes financial career I had abandoned when the Jacobs clan asserted their odious sway over my life's trajectory. The fire to establish myself as a singularly brilliant market analyst and consultant raged hotter than ever before. Within 2 years, I had clawed my way back into the cutthroat arena of high finance, rapidly establishing a hard-won reputation as a fierce, savvy negotiator with an incisive and unflinching market instinct. Seemingly overnight, my fledgling boutique consultancy went from a homespun side hustle to a force to be reckoned with on the national stage. "You've got a preternatural gift for this stuff, you know?" Sienna remarked in an odd tone one evening as I exited yet another lucrative teleconference, 6 figures richer for an hour's worth of counsel. "The sheer brass one's on you to step back into this shark's den after everything you went through." I simply shrugged, my gaze drifting over to where my 5-year-old daughter lay curled up in contented slumber on the couch, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. They tried to break me, and nearly succeeded, mostly because I allowed them to. I'll be damned if I squander this second lease on life by needlessly limiting myself again. The raw truth of those words hung in the air for a heavy pause as we both watched my little girl's peaceful rising and falling beneath her tattered blanket. Besides, I've got to set the bar high so this little munchkin knows just how brilliant and tenacious she can grow up to be, I continued wistfully. Her future is the only inheritance that matters to me now. The rest is just excess noise. Meeting Sienna's proud gaze with a resolute nod of affirmation, I felt the last vestiges of doubt and fear permanently slough off, like the molted skin of a transcendent serpent. What had once been shameful shackles had been meticulously reworked into brilliant new armor, steeled against the harsh realities that still lurked beyond this sanctum. Because out there in that tumultuous world, the specter of Ronan Jacobs and his ilk still festered. Venal, vicious aberrations perpetually locked in conflict with the strength and integrity I now embodied. And while his individual chapter had been scribed into ignominious history, that eternal crusade waged on in others. But I was more than ready to face those battles anew with a cleansed spirit and crystalline clarity of purpose, to uplift and cultivate that divine spark of potential until it erupted into an all-consuming wildfire, burning away every last mote of indignity and fear. No more poisoned births or anguished gasps for air amid that choking miasma of societal toxicity. Only the radiant promise of new dawns, to be ushered in by champions of change and retribution, unshackled from the anchors of oppression. Because on that day, standing at the precipice of our boldly reclaimed destiny, I was no longer prey, just the merciless apex predator, continually reborn in a blaze of glory.
I selected him as the recipient of the chocolate cake because I knew he favoured it. You always choose chocolate cake, don't you? Mum warned, concerned about the caffeine content. Ignoring her advice, I swiftly exchanged my cake with Kevin's. After a brief hesitation, I took a bite of the caffeine-laden treat while my mom continued to enjoy her own cake. Kevin, proudly boasting about reserving this cake a month, in advance emphasised the delicious crushed nuts on top. Suddenly, his demeanour shifted as he began to choke. His face turned red and he struggled to breathe. Foam formed at his mouth and he shivered before collapsing to the floor. My name is Emma, a 36-year-old working at a food inspection company. I live with my husband, Kevin, who is 2 years older, and our 7-year-old daughter, Catherine. Our journey began at university, leading to marriage and the birth of Catherine, however her slow development worried us. Despite consulting numerous doctors, no issues were found. Catherine's lack of progress caused a rift between Kevin and her. His mother, Kay, also deemed Catherine as having a disability, leading to her disapproval and avoidance. Only my father-in-law showed affection, considering Catherine unique and lovely. Before marriage, Kevin was kind, but his attitude changed with Catherine's challenges. His frequent bouts of anger, expressed through loud noises and table banging, stressed me to the point of health issues. Menstrual irregularities, eventually leading to menopause, prevented us from having more children. As Catherine entered school, her slow speech led to suggestions of a special needs class, an idea Kevin vehemently opposed. Despite my belief that it would be a better fit for her, I couldn't propose it due to Kevin and Kay's objections. Work offered solace from the home environment. When offered a full-time position, Kevin hesitated, insisting on my continued commitment to housework. Reluctantly, I agreed. However, Kevin's solution was to have his critical mother, Kay, take over household duties. After my father-in-law's sudden death, Kevin and Kay's behaviour at the funeral raised suspicions. Despite Catherine losing her only ally, Kevin spent more time at his parents' house. When I fell ill and asked for help, he refused, opting to stay away for a week. As my health improved, I received a job promotion, bringing both joy and the weight of added responsibilities in the midst of my challenging home life. I discussed the situation with Kevin, and as anticipated, he insisted that I should manage the household chores properly. To add insult to injury, he gave me a mocking look and questioned whether I could handle the title of a section chief, claiming it was equivalent to his position. Kevin abruptly left the table and headed to the bedroom. The next day, Kay visited our house and Kevin pointed out the supposed mess, attributing it to my lack of effort in housework. Kay hastily entered, meticulously inspecting everything from the cleanliness of the windows to the folding of the laundry and water stains in the bathroom. She made me redo everything, and Caffeine started engaging in conversation with Kay. Caffeine approached Kay with a serious expression, asking her about the 4 main elements of happiness and inquiring about happy hormones. Surprised by Catherine's rapid-fire questions, Kay appeared bewildered. Catherine continued her passionate explanation about neurotransmitters, leaving Kay increasingly perplexed. Eventually, overwhelmed by Catherine's focus, a worn-out Kay went home. On my birthday, Kevin, returning from a business trip, surprised me by buying a birthday cake. A first since our marriage, this unexpected act puzzled me, as Kevin had never bought anything for Catherine or me before. During dinner, he showered me with overly sweet words, apologising for leaving household chores to me and promising to help more. Well, Kevin's words made me uncomfortable. I didn't want to spoil the moment. After dinner, as I cleared the dishes, Kevin retrieved the cake from the fridge, insisting he would handle it. Although uneasy about his behaviour, I decided to call Catherine to join us. In Catherine's room, she warned me not to eat the cake, expressing urgency in her gaze. Trusting Catherine, I returned to the living room, where she insisted we eat without forks. I realised she had swapped my cake with Kevin's. As we ate, Kevin proudly discussed reserving the cake, and suddenly he began to choke. Kevin collapsed on the floor, showing signs of anaphylactic shock from a buckwheat allergy. Both Kevin and I were allergic to buckwheat, and it was confusing since we were eating cake that shouldn't contain any buckwheat. In a calm voice, Catherine instructed me to call an ambulance. Following her guidance, I hit Kevin's back to help him expel the cake. At the hospital, Kevin's life was saved, and I wondered how Catherine knew something life-threatening would happen. After completing the hospital admission procedures, I returned home. As soon as I arrived, Catherine showed me a candy wrapper she retrieved from the trash. It was a wrapper for cookies made with buckwheat flour, and Corrine explained that it was from the cake box Dad had bought. According to Seren, the seal on the box was half peeled off. And when she checked the kitchen trash, she found a kini wrapper she'd never seen before. Upon researching online, she discovered it contained buckwheat flour. She then reminded me of Catherine's warning mom. If you eat that, you'll die. The realisation hit me hard. If not for Caffeine's swift action, I could have been the one eating that potentially harmful cake. The thought of being the one on the hospital bed sent chills down my spine. As fear and suspicion crept in, I considered involving the police. However, Caffeine's words made me reconsider. If Dad was the one who collapsed, informing the police might make me a prime suspect. A feeling of despair overcame me, and Caffeine assured me that she would handle it. She ventured into Kevin's study, defying his strict instructions, and began searching for evidence. To my surprise, Caffeine found a notebook in a drawer that detailed a shocking revelation. My father-in-law had been victimised in a similar manner. The notebook described the plan to mix crushed buckwheat flour cookies with sprinkles. Even more disturbingly, Kai was implicated in this terrifying scheme. They were conspiring together, and at the bottom of the page, it ominously read, "Next is Emma's birthday." My hands involuntarily tightened around the notebook, and Caffeine, noticing my anger, reassured me that everything would be okay. Catherine shook her head regretfully, explaining that the notebook might not be admissible as evidence. If Kevin and Kay claimed it was just fantasy, the case would likely be dismissed. The lack of concrete evidence made me feel helpless, and Caffeine, sensing my frustration, held my hand firmly, promising to find the evidence and protect me. Determined to seek justice, Catherine and I began preparing for the final showdown. Our plan was to lure Kay into our house under the pretense of learning how to cook Kevin's favourite dish. While Kay taught me in the kitchen, Caffeine discreetly searched her bag and found the buckwheat cookies. With one cookie in hand, we took it to my workplace for a composition test. Several days later, as Kevin was discharged from the hospital, I informed Kay that I was preparing a celebration for his recovery. I asked her to pick him up, and while waiting, Catherine and I prepared his favourite dishes, including the potentially tainted cookie. As Kevin and Kay returned, we welcomed them to the table, where the atmosphere quickly shifted. Kevin whispered something to Kay, and they both seemed puzzled. It appeared that our plan was beginning to unfold, and I steeled myself for the confrontation ahead. As she released the fried chicken she held with her chopsticks, she seemed oblivious to the fact that it slipped from her grasp. The tension in the room intensified as Kevin and Kay refrained from touching the food. Deliberately, I engaged Kevin in conversation, inquiring about the seasoning. "Oh, I guess I can't make it as good as your mother does," he mumbled, glancing down. I responded with my biggest smile, assuring him that the seasoning not only tasted good but also seemed to provide energy. Casually, I mentioned my father-in-law's recommendation of the seasoning, observing Kevin and Kay shivering as if they were cold. Catherine, undeterred, sprinkled the seasoning over their rice. In protest, Kevin swatted away Catherine's hand, expressing concern about adding something suspicious. Ignoring his objections, I continued smiling and serving the food. Catherine persisted, reaching for the seasoning, but Kevin, with a terrifying expression, shouted, "Enough! Why are you so scared?" "I just want you and your mum to live longer," I cheerfully retorted, flashing my brightest smile. The atmosphere grew tense as Catherine defied Kevin's warning and sprinkled the seasoning over their rice. The room was charged with Kevin's anger as he shouted, "Stop putting something so suspicious into it." Unfazed, I continued with my smile, drawing attention to his past actions of sprinkling the same seasoning on my cake, leading to his hospitalization. With a triumphant gesture, I presented documents obtained from our company's inspector, linking the substance on the cake to the buckwheat cookies. Kevin and Kay exchanged glances, denying any knowledge of the situation. However, I placed a copy of Kevin's incriminating notebook on the table, revealing details of the ordered cookies and their sinister plan. Red and then blue in the face, Kevin and Kay struggled to explain away the evidence. Kevin's notebook held damning information, including details of their plot and attempts to mask the crime. Staring sternly at Kay, I connected the dots, questioning them about their involvement in my father-in-law's death. Kevin finally admitted to his vengeful act, revealing his resentment towards my father-in-law's interference. Shocked and angry, I listened as he confessed to mixing the buckwheat cookies into the seasoning, targeting my father-in-law due to his disapproval of Kevin's relationship with his mother. Fueled by anger and disbelief, I declared their actions as a crime and threatened to report them to the police. In a desperate attempt to conceal evidence, Kevin snatched the copy of the notebook from the table, crumpled it, and possibly swallowed it. Caffeine, and I stared in surprise at his desperate act. Caffeine calmly revealed that it was just a copy, and the original was safely stored elsewhere. She placed a voice recorder on the table, exposing their crimes from the beginning. As the evidence mounted against them, Kevin collapsed into his chair, realizing the gravity of their actions. With the truth exposed, the police took Kevin and Kay away. Their cries and protests echoed, but the evidence, including copies of the notebook, voice recordings, and purchase history, secured a guilty verdict. The legal proceedings led to my successful divorce from Kevin, who had to pay compensation, along with Kay receiving $660 as compensation. I used a portion to build a grave for my father-in-law, a proper place for mourning. After the trial, Catherine and I reported the incident in front of my father-in-law's grave, seeking closure and justice. Later, Catherine shared an IQ test result, revealing her score of 135. Surprised and impressed, I learned about her enrollment in a school for gifted children, where she flourished in an environment that allowed her to study what she loved. Our life together became enriching, filled with happiness and improved well-being. Despite the challenges, living with Catherine proved enjoyable, and our smiles never faded.
I am Liz, and through a curious twist of fate, I find myself bound to the most remarkable man I've ever encountered. Alex, we're both 28, proud owners of our cozy abode, diligently covering our bills while crafting a life uniquely. A year has passed since we exchanged vows, and truth be told, life has been quite pleasant, except for a singular complication: Alex's parents. Now, don't get me wrong. I never anticipated playing the role of the knight in shining armor as the daughter-in-law. However, I certainly didn't envision becoming the family's unwelcome guest either. The inaugural encounter with my in-laws felt akin to entering a lion's den with a stake strapped to my neck. Jane, my mother-in-law, possessed a knack for scrutinizing me, as though pondering whether I was more of an inconvenience or just plain dull. It was evident that she had formed her opinion about me before I could even utter a greeting. Alex had forewarned me about his mom's assertive personality on our way to their place that first time, advising me not to take it too personally. Despite my efforts at dinner while innocently passing the salt, Jane seized the opportunity to reminisce about Stephanie's culinary prowess, referring to me in the third person. Alex, seemingly uncomfortable, acknowledged her remarks without meeting my gaze, feeling like an invisible presence at the table. I swallowed my discomfort with a forced smile. When I tentatively acknowledged Stephanie's cooking skills, Jane's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She seemed to be measuring me against a ghost, and I confided in Alex about feeling scrutinized. He reassured me, holding me close and affirming that I was the one he chose. Little did I know that Jane had a more intricate plan in motion, and I was unwittingly cast as the pawn in her familial chess game. Living with a severe allergy is more than just inconvenient. It's akin to having a persistent shadow whispering danger in your ear. Since childhood, peanuts have been my formidable adversaries, leading to an emergency room visit after a mere spoonful of peanut paste. Consequently, my parents received a crystal-clear directive: shield her from peanuts and an array of other foods for her well-being: soy, peas, cherries, almonds, tomatoes, apricots, bananas, and even potatoes. It's a list that raises eyebrows among waiters and prompts hesitation from friends inviting me over for dinner. Jane, my mother-in-law, is well aware of this extensive list. Nevertheless, she manages to question the restrictions every time we dine at her place. Her tone, hovering between concern and disbelief, persistently suggests that maybe I can indulge just a bit, oblivious to the potential consequences. Once at a family gathering, Jane insisted on the safety of her casserole, only for Alex to discover a potentially hazardous ingredient. Though we gracefully excused ourselves, leaving the untouched casserole behind, the incident lingered as a small victory in an ongoing battle where Jane held all the cards. I've learned to navigate this allergen-laden world with caution, treating every meal outing as a strategic operation. Alex, with his supportive demeanor, accompanies me through this culinary minefield, constantly reassuring me that my cautiousness is justified. Yet, Jane's subtle jabs persist, extending beyond the dinner table. Her texts carry a warning tone, reminding me that not everyone takes my conditions seriously. It's more than a mere jab. It's a reminder of vulnerability, a realization that my allergy is perceived as a weakness to be exploited. Dinners at Jane's house are orchestrated affairs, resembling a play where everyone knows their lines except for the unwitting lead. I, the daughter-in-law, I was the unpredictable element, the wild card capable of unintentionally stirring up a commotion with a single bite. Alex did his best to ease the situation, but there's only so much you can do when you're playing on someone else's home turf. On a particular evening, the tension hung in the air as heavily as the gravy on the table. Jane was bustling around, placing dish after dish on the table. I sat there with my plate empty, anxiously waiting to discern what I could eat without risking a hospital visit. Alex, in his ever-supportive manner, passed the green beans, urging, "They're just divine." Jane's voice dripped with sweetness that failed to reach her eyes. Eyeing the beans, I sensed something was off. "What's in them?" I asked. "Oh, just a touch of almond slivers for crunch," Jane replied, waving a dismissive hand. Halting Alex's reach, I said, "I can't eat those. Almonds are a no-go for me, Jane." Feigning surprise, a hand to her chest, she responded, "Oh dear, I must have forgotten. Silly me." Alex stood up, his chair scraping back, his voice firm with frustration. "Mom, this is serious. Liz could end up in the hospital." Jane's eyes narrowed slightly and she retorted, "I just wanted to make something nice. It's not my fault Liz has all these allergies." The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, forks pausing midair, and embarrassed glances exchanged. Mark, Alex's dad, attempted to diffuse the tension. "Let's just enjoy the meal, shall we? There's plenty Liz can eat." But the damage was done. The rest of the dinner passed in strained politeness, with Jane asking pointed questions about my allergies, as if she were jotting down notes for the next time. Later, when Alex and I were alone, he apologized. "I'm sorry, Liz. I should have double-checked everything before we came. Tired of feeling like a problem to be managed." I responded, "It's not your fault, but I'm starting to think your mom does these things on purpose." He didn't answer, and he didn't need to. We both knew the truth. Jane was serving up a side of malice with every meal, and I was the main course. I could always tell when Jane had been working on Alex. He'd get this distant look in his eyes, as if he were seeing through me, weighing her words against his own judgment. On this particular evening, a cloud seemed to settle over him, and I knew it before he even spoke. "My mom thinks we should consider." "Well, she thinks we might not be thinking about the future enough," Alex muttered, not meeting my eye as he fumbled with the TV remote. "The future?" I asked, a sinking feeling in my gut. "Yeah, kids and your health issues," he continued, the word issues hanging awkwardly in the air between us. "She talked to you about my allergies again, didn't she?" He sighed, setting the remote down. She's just worried, Liz. She thinks it's a lot for us to handle, especially if we want a family. I bristled, asserting, "We've talked about this. I've managed so far, haven't I? And there are plenty of people with allergies who have kids." Alex ran a hand through his hair, a sign of stress. I know. It's just she has this way of making me doubt things. The room was quiet for a moment, the tension palpable. I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining. "We're not fighting. We're on the same side, remember?" He nodded, pulling me into a hug. "You and me against the world, right?" "Right," I said. But as I held him, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's words were like weeds threatening to grow wild and choke the life out of the beautiful thing we had. It wasn't just my allergies that needed managing. It was the doubts that could seep into the cracks of even the strongest relationships. The news of my pregnancy was a happy surprise for Alex and me, but a complicated one for everyone else. When we announced it to his parents, Jane's reaction was like watching a robot trying to mimic human emotions. A pause, then a smile that didn't quite match the situation. "We're gonna have a baby, Mom," Alex said, his voice a mix of pride and caution. "That's wonderful," Jane managed to say, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. "We must have a family dinner to celebrate." Celebrations at Jane's were never just celebrations. But I saw the hopeful look in Alex's eyes the night of the dinner arrived, and the house buzzed with relatives. Jane was the perfect hostess, moving gracefully from guest to guest. When she reached us, her smile was practiced. "Congratulations, Liz. This is such a joyous occasion." "Thank you, Jane," I replied, trying to match her formality. "We're excited." Alex wrapped his arm around my waist, a silent thank you for playing along. As dinner approached, I felt the familiar anxiety. A table full of food was a minefield for me, but tonight I hoped would be different. The table was a feast, and I felt every eye on me as I hesitated, my hand hovering over the options. "Go on, dear," Jane urged. "Eat up." "You're eating for two now?" I smiled weakly, choosing the safest options, vegetables and rice, plain and simple. But as I reached for a slice of bread, Jane stopped me. "Actually, maybe not that one," she said quickly. "I'm not sure if the baker used soy flour." I paused, bread in hand, meeting her gaze. There was a flicker of something there, concern, or perhaps it was a challenge. "Thank you for letting me know," I said, placing the bread down. However, warning bells were already ringing in my head. How did she know about the soy flour? It felt like too close a call, too perfect a save. The rest of the meal passed in a blur, with congratulations mingling with the clinking of glasses. Yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's hospitality was a veneer, concealing a trap set and waiting for just the right moment. The family dinner, meant to celebrate our future baby, was nothing short of a banquet. Jane had outdone herself, creating a spread that would make a Thanksgiving dinner look modest. However, my stomach was tied in knots. Not from hunger. Every dish felt like a potential hazard, a hidden enemy that could send me to the hospital. As we all took our seats, lively chatter filled the air, comprising the usual family gossip and stories. Jane, at the head of the table, presided over the feast like a queen in her court. She called everyone to attention with a gentle tap of her glass. "Before we begin, I just want to say how thrilled we are to be celebrating Liz and Alex's upcoming addition to our family," Jane announced, her voice steady and clear. Applause and cheers followed, and I forced a smile, feeling Alex squeeze my hand under the table. "Thank you, everyone," I said. "We're really looking forward to this new chapter in our lives." The meal began, and I tentatively picked at my food, choosing the simplest items. Alex watched me, his brow furrowed with concern. "You doing okay?" he asked quietly. "Yeah, just being careful," I replied, pushing a roasted potato around my plate. Jane's eyes were on me, and I felt like a specimen under a microscope. "Liz, you haven't touched your salad. The dressing is on the side, just as you like it," she said, her voice tinged with forced cheerfulness. "Thank you, Jane. I'm just not much of an appetite tonight," I said, avoiding the salad that could easily contain hidden allergens. As the dinner wore on, tension grew. Every time Jane offered me something, my anxiety spiked, and the room felt hot, the walls closing in. Then came the cake, a beautiful confection with layers of sponge and cream that drew admiration from the room. Jane cut a slice and handed it to me with a smile that might have been genuine if I hadn't known better. For the mom-to-be, she said. I really shouldn't, I said, looking at the cake. Then at Alex, then at Jane. But it looks delicious. Oh, come on, Liz. One little bite won't hurt. For the baby, Jane pressed, her voice as sweet as the icing. That's when Alex's dad, Mark, stepped in, swiftly knocking the plate from my hands. The cake tumbled to the floor, and stunned silence fell over the room. What the hell, Dad? Alex exclaimed, anger and confusion in his voice. Mark stood, his face pale but his voice firm. I saw the label in the trash. That cake has peanut oil in it. To a room erupted in chaos. Jane's face showed shock, but her eyes betrayed something darker, fear, maybe guilt. Alex stood, his chair clattering behind him. Mom, did you know about this? Jane's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. In that moment, the truth became as clear as the danger on my plate. The room was dead silent after Mark's revelation, the dropped cake like a crime scene on the hardwood floor. Everyone's eyes were locked on Jane, who seemed to shrink under the collective gaze. Mom? Is it true? Did you know? Alex's voice cut through the tension, sharp and demanding. Jane looked away, her jaw clenched, and for the first time I saw a hint of fear in her eyes. Maybe she realized that her actions hadn't just endangered me, but jeopardized her relationship with her son, her reputation, everything. The rest of the evening was a blur of arguments, tears, and hushed conversations as the family tried to process what had happened. Alex and I left early, the weight of the evening heavy on our shoulders. We didn't speak much on the drive home. What was there to say? The truth was out, and with it, the facade of a polite, if not happy, family was shattered. The drive home was quiet, filled with a heavy silence, loaded with things left unsaid. When we finally walked through our front door, Alex and I just stood there, the echo of the night's drama still ringing in our ears. Alex was the first to break the silence. I can't believe my own mother would do something like that, he said, his voice hollow. I sat down on the couch, the cushion failing to comfort me. I know it's a lot to take in, he said, sitting beside me and taking my hands in his. I'm so sorry, Liz. This is unforgivable. I looked at him, seeing the pain in his eyes, and my heart ached. It's not your fault, Alex. We couldn't have known she'd go this far. But the truth was there, hanging between us. Jane had crossed a line, and there was no going back. The family was in pieces. Some stood by us, shocked and appalled by Jane's actions, while others struggled to wrap their heads around the reality of the situation. The next few days were a whirlwind. Alex's phone buzzed constantly with messages and calls from relatives expressing shock, support, and apologies. Through it all, there was deafening silence from Jane. No apologies, no explanations. Alex finally broke the news to me a week later. My dad's left her. He can't get past what she did, he said, a twinge of something like regret in his tone. He said it's been a long time coming. I wasn't sure how to feel relief, sadness, pity. And Jane? I asked tentatively. She's not handling it well. She's alone now, Alex replied, a twinge of regret in his tone. We sat in our living room. The walls we'd painted together, the furniture we'd picked out during countless trips to the store. It was our home, filled with our memories, our love. Outside, there was a storm brewing, one that threatened to uproot everything we knew. In that moment, I realized that no matter what happened, we had each other. We were a team about to bring a new life into the world, and that was what mattered. I love you, Liz, Alex said, pulling me close. I love you too, I whispered back. The fallout from that night would linger, and the scars it left on our family would take time to heal. But as I looked at Alex, at the life we'd built, and the future we were about to embark on, I knew that we'd weather any storm together. As for Jane, she was a chapter in our lives that we had closed, a story that we wouldn't let define us. From now on, it was just us, our baby, and the road ahead. Whatever it brought, we'd face it together.
I find myself in a predicament, entangled in a web of familial expectations and financial disputes within my marriage. The notion of inheriting my rightful share seems to be slipping away, overshadowed by the relentless pursuit of wealth by my husband and mother-in-law. In the realm of matrimony, one would assume that an inheritance is a natural entitlement. Yet in my case, it appears to be an elusive right, as both my husband and mother-in-law exhibit an unwavering fixation on money. Their covetous tendencies extend beyond mere possession, venturing into the audacious territory of claiming my late father's hard-earned legacy as their own. The audacity of surrendering my father's amassed wealth to these individuals is inconceivable. Unforgivable, in fact. My resolve strengthens with each passing day, and I am determined not to succumb to their voracious desires. Allow me to introduce myself. A 44-year-old navigating the complexities of a 20-year-old marriage. Amidst the delicate balancing act of household responsibilities and a demanding job, my husband John, aged 46, toils away at a supermarket near the station. Our paths crossed during my university years, a chance encounter at the very supermarket where I held a part-time job. Casual dating evolved into marriage at the age of 24, and our union now includes our son, Bill, who recently embarked on his journey into university life this spring. The fabric of my life is woven with fulfilling responsibilities, but a disquieting undercurrent persists: my husband's reckless spending habits. While the right to spend our hard-earned money is undeniable, his unrelenting demands for additional funds, accompanied by a lack of transparency, only serve to exacerbate the situation. In the presence of my husband and his parents, financial matters become a battleground. My resistance to their insatiable demands is met with vehement opposition, and the atmosphere becomes charged with tension. My son, Bill, thankfully, shares my sentiments towards his grandparents and ensures his absence whenever they make an appearance. However, a startling revelation from Bill unveils a new layer of turmoil. The revelation of my husband's infidelity, witnessed firsthand by our son, leaves me more disheartened than angry. Bill, advocating for a divorce, echoes my sentiments. Though reassured by my son's support, I decide to confront my husband before taking any drastic steps. As I prepare to address the issue, an unexpected intrusion occurs. My husband and his parents barge into our living room. Seemingly innocuous, their visit takes a turn when my husband proposes an extravagant trip to Hawaii, accompanied by a demand for a substantial sum of $5,000. Frustration reaches its peak, prompting me to confront them not only about their financial expectations, but also about my husband's infidelity. The room falls silent, and I brace myself for the repercussions of this revelation. Prepared to confront my husband as planned, I confronted him about the allegations of infidelity. His initial response was one of denial and confusion, questioning the need for proof and asserting his innocence. I pointed out that someone had witnessed him entering a hotel with another woman, to which he responded by challenging the credibility of the observer. Frustrated, I hesitated, not wanting my anger to be directed at our son, Bill, who had shared the unsettling revelation. Astonishingly, my mother-in-law dismissed the seriousness of the accusation, suggesting that forgiving a cheat or two is normal for men. I found it incredulous that a woman herself could condone such behavior. However, the urgency shifted to their demand for money for a Hawaii trip, a distraction my husband readily embraced, leaving the matter of his infidelity unresolved. Exasperated with these constant financial disputes and moral insensitivity, I decided that it was time to sever ties. Calmly, I announced that we were getting a divorce. In response, my husband threatened to claim my parents' mansion as part of the property division if the separation proceeded. As tensions escalated during our argument, my cell phone rang, interrupting the heated exchange. It was my uncle, my father's brother, bearing unsettling news. My father had collapsed, lost consciousness, and was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Urgently summoned to the hospital, I explained the situation to my husband and his parents before departing. Upon arriving at the hospital, I discovered that my father was stable but not in optimal condition. My father, age 67, had dedicated his life to the family business, overcoming initial challenges to provide a comfortable life for us. The news of his sudden health crisis left me emotionally shaken prompting me to reflect on his irreplaceable role in my life. Days later, my father regained consciousness, alleviating some concerns. Visiting him with Bill, we shared a moment of relief and concern. However, the doctor's subsequent call revealed the severity of my father's condition, exacerbated by years of overwork. In the following days, my father passed away, and grief enveloped me. Throughout this difficult time, Bill remained a steadfast source of support. As an only child, I shouldered the responsibility of funeral preparations, and my husband's indifference only heightened my emotional burden. At the funeral, my in-laws made an appearance, expressing admiration for the family home and insensitive curiosity about its value. In the aftermath of the memorial services, while attempting to come to terms with my father's passing, my in-laws, father-in-law, and mother-in-law made a sudden visit. Their focus, however, remained on the materialistic aspects, with my mother-in-law fixating on the grandeur of the house and my father-in-law probing into its potential value. Their departure, seemingly content with their financial inquiries, left me speechless. As I began to cope with the grieving process and put away funeral clothes at home, a new wave of confusion emerged. My parents were on their way over, and I was left wondering about the purpose of their unexpected visit. My initial apprehension deepened as I awaited the arrival of my parents, anticipating another discussion veering towards financial matters. In a solemn attempt to understand their motives, I resolved to engage in conversation upon their arrival. As they entered, my in-laws wore satisfied grins, taking their places on the sofa. The atmosphere tensed when my husband abruptly suggested we move from our spacious house, proposing that his parents join us in our new abode. Baffled by this sudden proposition, I reiterated my intention to proceed with the divorce, a decision fueled by my commitment to address my late father's affairs. However, my husband, dismissing the notion of infidelity and divorce, casually declared his intent to share everything between spouses. This included the inheritance, a claim he justified as his right as a husband. Their audacious assumption that all the inheritance belonged to them infuriated me, and their whimsical discussions about room preferences in a new mansion only fueled my frustration. Determined to thwart their plans and protect the legacy my father had worked hard to build, I vowed never to let them have their way. The audacity of my husband and his parents, treating my father's house and wealth as if it were rightfully theirs, had pushed my patience beyond its limits. A few days later, a call from my uncle brought a brief respite. His words of comfort and support reassured me that I had done well amidst the challenges. However, the conversation took an unexpected turn when my uncle expressed a pressing need to meet and share crucial information. Intrigued and apprehensive, I agreed to meet him that night. As my uncle disclosed shocking revelations about my husband and in-laws, I found myself grappling with the gravity of the situation. Determined to seek guidance, I confided in my uncle, sharing the preposterous demands and claims made by my husband and in-laws. My uncle, furious at their audacity, assured me that he would handle the situation. Intrigued by my uncle's plan, I eagerly met with him again the following day, this time accompanied by Bill. The plan unfolded, aiming to enlighten Bill about his father and grandparents and prepare him for the challenging road ahead. Braced for the confrontation, I summoned my in-laws to our house, bringing together the 6 of us, my husband, Bill, and the 3 of them. The discussion centered around the prospect of all 6 of us living in my family home. The proposal caught them off guard, and after confirming their seriousness, my mother-in-law enthusiastically endorsed the idea, expressing eagerness to live in what she deemed a dreamlike mansion. The elation, however, was short-lived. Reality struck when my father-in-law reminded us of the cancellation fee for their previously planned trip, insisting on reimbursement. Appalled by their audacious demands, I realized the depth of their selfishness. Unfazed, my mother-in-law reassured us that they would recoup the money soon enough, dismissing the urgency of the situation. Accustomed to my husband and in-laws' relentless pursuit of money, I had grown somewhat immune to their schemes. However, Bill, unaccustomed to their blatant money-grabbing tendencies, appeared visibly upset and angered by their audacity. In an attempt to soothe him, I gently patted Bill's shoulder, assuring him that we would handle the situation. As the conversation revolved around the proposed move into my family home, I decided to play along, knowing well that their assumptions were far from reality. John, my husband, questioned the logistics of the move, displaying an unusual sharpness in his tone. Attempting to deflect the tension, I explained that Bill and I would go ahead to prepare the house, emphasizing that it was a considerable task requiring early action. However, John's skepticism lingered, and he questioned Bill's ability to handle household tasks, especially since he was still a student. I managed to navigate the conversation by suggesting that Bill could manage his responsibilities, though John continued to resist over trivial matters. Despite his resistance, my mother-in-law remained in good spirits, seemingly oblivious to the underlying tension. The conversation inadvertently shifted towards the size of the mansion and the number of rooms, with my mother-in-law expressing excitement. Seizing the opportunity, I assured them that they could choose their rooms first and even proposed a gradual process of tidying up, considering my work schedule. My calculated responses allowed me to temporarily deflect their expectations, leaving them satisfied with their perceived victory. In my mind, I harbored a plan to undermine their assumptions and bring them down from their lofty expectations. The moving day was set a month later, and I eagerly anticipated the final showdown. On the decisive day, my husband and in-laws arrived with a moving truck, expecting to take possession of what they believed to be their new home. Bill and I awaited them in front of the entrance. Ignoring my husband's attempt at humor, I observed the sparkles of excitement in my in-laws' eyes. Little did they know that the impending revelation would shatter their illusions. As my husband made light of the situation, the gate opened, and my uncle, my father's brother, emerged from the house. Silent and imposing, my uncle confronted them, leaving my husband and in-laws puzzled. It became evident that my husband barely remembered my uncle from the funeral. Setting the record straight, my uncle asserted his ownership of the house and clarified the inheritance distribution. The shock on my husband and in-laws' faces grew as they realized the gravity of their misconceptions. Despite my uncle's assertive explanation, my husband remained calm, seemingly attempting to move past the confrontation. In a sudden turn of events, Bill intervened, accusing his father of infidelity. The revelation left my husband shocked and exposed, unable to hide from the truth his son had uncovered. Observing my father entering a hotel with another woman confirmed my suspicions of his infidelity. However, when confronted, he adamantly denied the accusations, refusing to admit to his transgressions. In response, Bill, my son, urged his father to leave our lives, emphasizing the impact of his actions on our family. Despite this plea, my in-laws remained fixated on financial gains, insisting on a proper property division if a divorce were to proceed. My in-laws boldly declared that they had relinquished their apartment and quit their jobs to partake in a life of leisure in the assumed family mansion. Their presumptuous demands left me astounded, especially when they revealed that both my husband and father-in-law had quit their jobs. I questioned their rationale, bewildered by their abrupt decisions and the apparent reliance on my father's inheritance. In response to their audacious claims, I asserted my rightful inheritance as my father's child, anticipating a substantial property division. To my relief, my uncle, a lawyer, intervened to handle the legal proceedings. He exposed my husband's infidelity, supported by evidence gathered during a month-long investigation. The revelation left my husband and in-laws stunned, and they finally began to comprehend the severity of the situation. With my uncle's guidance, I firmly informed them to handle all matters through legal channels and requested they never show their faces to me again. Despite a momentary glare from my husband, they left, and I expressed my gratitude to my uncle for his invaluable support. Following the legal proceedings, Bill and I moved into the family home, fulfilling my father's and grandfather's wishes. Grateful for the opportunity to live in a house filled with memories, I thanked my uncle for the life-changing experience. Bill, having learned from his uncle's guidance, dedicated himself to his studies, aspiring to become a successful lawyer. My ex-husband and his parents found themselves in a challenging situation, residing in an old apartment and struggling to secure new employment. The consequences of their actions began to unravel as my ex-husband reached out for financial assistance. However, having severed all ties, I refused to lend him money, enforcing the newfound estrangement. In the aftermath, my ex-husband's life took an unexpected turn. He resorted to part-time and day jobs, attempting to navigate the consequences of his choices. Their elaborate plan to borrow money for a non-existent luxury trip further exposed the depths of their deception. Grateful for the weight lifted off my shoulders, I focused on my career, with the immediate goal of witnessing Bill successfully graduate from college. Mama, help me! What happened? Weren't you on a field trip? I don't want to go. I was stunned when my daughter, who had left the house smiling and ready for her field trip, came back home in tears. I couldn't understand why she was home. For a moment, I was completely at a loss. Seeing her in such a state, I spoke to her gently, and at the same time, a new question arose in my mind. How did you get back home? She was supposed to go to the amusement park by bus with her school. It didn't make sense for her to be back home 2 hours after she left. Choking back tears, she slowly replied, I came back in a car. They told me to get off right in front of the house. A car. I couldn't hide my surprise and raised my voice. Was it someone you know? It was Dad. What? I immediately called my husband, unable to stay calm. Hello, what's going on? What do you mean Susie's back home? I don't know anything about that. The call was abruptly ended, filled with anger. I clenched my fists. Can you tell me what happened? Yeah, look inside my backpack. Inside her backpack, I found a mess. The lunch I packed with her favorite foods was scattered everywhere, the lid open. The juice in her water bottle was gone too. Did Dad do this? Yes, I left Susie with a friend and headed to my husband's office. I couldn't forgive him for ruining the field trip she had been looking forward to. Bursting into his office, I was ready to fight for my daughter. I'm Mindy, a stay-at-home mom in my 30s. I live with my husband Tom, who's 3 years younger than me, and our 6-year-old daughter Susie. But Susie isn't a child born to both of us. She's my daughter from a previous relationship. Maybe you should think about remarrying. Yeah, still can't forget him. I lost my first husband in a car accident. For years before marrying Tom, my mom worried about me and suggested I remarry. But I just couldn't think about it positively. Back then, I was working as an office temp, doing my best to provide for my daughter. That's when I met Tom. Aren't you working too much lately? Always staying late at the office? It's nothing new. I'm fine. I'm worried about you. Let me help so you can finish up early. Tom had just joined the company and was always kind to me, honestly. I was trying not to get involved with men much at that time, but I couldn't push Tom away, probably because he reminded me of my late husband. You don't have to pay so much attention to me, you know. Why does that? Because I like you, Mindy? Huh, his sudden confession caught me off guard. But I'm divorced, you know. That's okay with me, and I have a child. There was a brief pause, and I thought I saw Tom's eyebrows twitch. It's okay. His words shook me. I was happy, but responding right away seemed too irresponsible. I can't answer right away. I understand. I'll wait for as long as it takes. When I got home, I was torn about what to do. Later, I made a proposal to meet my daughter. If Susie accepted him, I'd consider his confession. Hi, I'm Tom. I'm Susie. Nice to meet you. The following weekend, the three of us went out together. To my surprise, Tom and Susie's bond deepened more than I had expected, resembling that of a real father and daughter. Seeing this, I felt reassured and decided to give my answer. About what you asked before, if I'm okay, then yes, I'd like that. That's great. And so, we started dating. 6 months later, we got married. I was excited about our new life together, but marriage doesn't always go as planned. Our new life began in a home we rented, and Susie seemed happy, which put me at ease. However, that was only in the beginning. Now that we're married, I want you to be a stay-at-home mom, Tom said. What? Why all of a sudden? Susie is starting elementary school this year. Tom's expression turned irritated. Besides, working together in the same company is inconvenient considering what others might think. Maybe, but let's go with that. Okay. His earlier annoyance disappeared, replaced by a smile. Not wanting to argue just after getting married, I reluctantly agreed to his proposal. From there, our relationship gradually worsened. Okay, I'm off to the hair salon. Please take care of Susie. Sure, got it. See you later. Have a good time. And I left. This was the first time since getting married that Tom and Susie would spend time alone together. I was anxious but thought it would be fine since they seemed to have a good relationship. However, when I returned home after about 2 hours, the house was eerily quiet. I'm back. No response from either of them. Feeling something was off, I headed straight to the living room. There I found Susie lying on the sofa. Susie, huh, Mom? Oh, good. I was relieved and collapsed onto the floor. Susie had just been sleeping. Where's Dad? I couldn't feel Tom's presence in the house. He said he was going out and left me alone. What? I tried calling Tom, but he didn't answer. About an hour later, he returned. I'm back. I rushed to the entrance. Where are you? Oh, just went for a walk. What? Leaving Susie alone? Don't be so mad. Susie was asleep, and I just needed a break. But I couldn't overlook a certain change in Tom. That's quite a nice smell for just a walk, isn't it? I noticed a sweet floral scent, like body soap, coming from Tom. Must be your imagination. Saying this, Tom quickly headed to our bedroom. And when he came out, he had changed his clothes, probably to get rid of the scent. It was troubling to think the worst so early in our marriage. Why did you change? I got sweaty, and anyway, I'm hungry. Since then, I started to harbor doubts about Tom. He began avoiding us, and it pained me to see Susie looking lonely. It seemed Susie felt the same, sometimes showing concern for me despite her young age. Mom, are you okay? What's wrong? I'm fine. That's good. Were you worried about me? Thank you. I hugged my daughter gently. In this difficult life, her smile was my only happiness. It was my solace. Then came a night when I felt the most anger I ever had. I woke up suddenly and noticed Tom wasn't beside me. Thirsty, I was about to head to the kitchen when I heard Tom's voice. He seemed to be talking on the phone. Yeah, that's right. I'm tired, you know. I shouldn't have married someone with a kid. I only did it because she was pretty for her age. I was shocked by what I heard. I stood frozen in place. Tom had always been distant with Susie, but I never thought it was this bad. His complaints continued. Yeah, that's true. What should I do now, huh? No, that's going too far. I didn't know what they were talking about, but it couldn't be good. And lately, she's not as close to me. It really gets on my nerves. Maybe I need to show her who's boss. I was surprised at his awful feelings towards Susie, but my anger towards him grew even more. I thought about confronting him, but held back. Instead, I decided to record this conversation on my phone. When I got back to the living room door, he was still laughing and mocking us. I won't forgive this, so I recorded the conversation as evidence. Well, I'm going to bed now. See you. I quickly got into bed. I spent the night awake, unable to sleep. And it wasn't just Tom that was the problem. His mother was a big issue too. Mindy, aren't you thinking about moving in together soon? I'm sorry, but we don't have any plans for that right now. Has your husband agreed to this? I'll talk to him later. Sigh, I allowed my son to marry a divorced woman with a child. It seems Tom isn't keen on it either. That's because you've been saying things to him. No way. His mother thought I had stolen her precious son. Even Tom seemed a bit fed up with his overprotective mother. Originally, she had suggested we move in together as a condition for allowing our marriage, but it was my father-in-law who stopped it. That happened when we went to his parents' house to announce our marriage. You don't have to insist on living with us. That's not the point. please be quiet for a bit. What matters are the feelings of these two. What do you think, Tom? I might consider it eventually, but for now, I want to live with just the three of us as a family. Then it's settled. Tom says so, so it should be fine. Thus, we got married and started our life as a family of three. But now, the hopeful person I was back then is gone, and I never could have imagined what would happen next. Here, this. What is it? Susie handed me a field trip notice when she returned from school. A field trip, huh? That's nice. Yeah, I'm excited. She looked genuinely happy, and seeing her like that made me happy too. Then Tom came home. What are you two happily chatting about? Susie's got a field trip coming up. Oh, where to? An amusement park in the next state over. Ah, that big place. It felt like a pleasant family conversation, which had been rare lately. Susie seemed satisfied talking and smiling with Tom. But at that time, Tom was thinking of something terrible to do using Susie's field trip. I'll be home late tonight, so don't wait until dinner, okay? Tom, who started coming home late more often, seemed unusually happy when he did return. Something good happened. No, nothing special. But again, there was the scent of body soap coming from him. I wanted to let Susie have her field trip without any issues, so I chose to tolerate it this time. Then, on the evening before Susie's field trip, I'm home. Ah, what a day. You're late again today. What, you got a problem with that? No, not at all. Oh, by the way, I'll be going into work in the afternoon tomorrow, okay? Got it. At that moment, I didn't think much of his words. Looking back, it was strange, but maybe my interest in Tom had faded, and then the next day. Huh? Tom, you're leaving already? I thought you were working in the afternoon today. Yeah, I was, but I have some things to do. So I'll be heading out early. With that, Tom hurriedly left for work. He seemed a bit flustered, but my attention quickly turned to Susie. That everything. Yeah. Then have a good trip. Bye, I'm off. Susie left with a beaming smile. She had been looking forward to the field trip ever since the day it was announced. Recently, she seemed a bit down due to my husband's behavior, but I thought this trip would cheer her up. But I was about to realize my mistake. It was about 2 hours after Susie had left. I guess she's probably at the amusement park having fun by now. As I thought this, I heard the sound of the door opening. When I went to the entrance, there was Susie saying, "Mom, help me." What? What happened? What about the field trip? I don't want to go. I realized this was no small matter. The smile I saw in the morning was gone, replaced by large tears. I couldn't understand why she was home, and for a moment, I was completely lost for thoughts, overwhelmed by her state. I gently spoke to her. Let's go inside for now, okay? Okay. I sat her down on the sofa and observed her, but she didn't seem to be injured. At the same time, a new question popped into my mind. How did you get back home? You were supposed to go to the amusement park by bus with your school. It's impossible for you to walk back home from there. Sobbing, Susie slowly answered. I came back by car. I was dropped off right in front of the house. A car. I raised my voice in surprise. Was it someone you know? It was Dad. What? I couldn't sit still and called my husband. Hello? What's going on? What do you mean Susie's back home? I don't know anything about that. The call was cut off abruptly, and I was filled with anger, clenching my fists. Can you tell me what happened? Yeah, look inside my backpack. As soon as Susie suggested it, I looked inside her backpack and found a mess. Her favorite lunch I packed was scattered everywhere, the lid open. Not only that, but the juice that should have been in her water bottle was also gone. Did Dad do this? Yes. Understood. I left Susie with a friend and headed to my husband's workplace. On the way, I got a call from the school. Is this Susie's mom? Actually, yes, I am. Is this about Susie? The teacher who called sounded panicked. In my anger towards my husband, I had forgotten that Susie's absence would naturally be a concern. Do you know anything? She just came back home a while ago. Back home? So that means, The teacher sounded like she knew something about the situation. Do you have any idea what might have happened? I heard from other students that a man took her away. I see. Anyway, my daughter is safe now. I'm really sorry for the trouble. I'm glad Susie is safe. There's one more thing I'd like to ask. After a bit more conversation, I hung up the phone. It was probably my husband Tom, who the teacher mentioned, and it seems like he did something outrageous. Maybe he acted on what he talked about over the phone before disrupting the field trip Susie was so looking forward to. I couldn't forgive him for that. All right, let's go. When I arrived in front of Tom's workplace, I took a deep breath. It had been a while since I'd been here. I knew where Tom's office was. Mindy. Oh, there was a colleague from my temp days, one of the few friends I had back then. What brings you here today? Just something. You're here for your husband, sort of. Still a happy couple, huh? I'll leave you to it then. My former colleague didn't know the situation, and it hurt a little, but I couldn't back down now that I had come this far. I burst into Tom's office. Everyone inside looked at me, including Tom. Why are you here? I came to see you. This is a workplace. Please leave. The office was abuzz with our unusual situation. I thought it might not be bad to let everyone know Tom's true nature here. I came to talk about Susie. That's something we can discuss at home. No, it has to be here. What nonsense are you talking about? Everyone here will find out what you did to Susie. Then, someone from the back of the office approached. It was my former manager. It's been a while. Hello. It's been a long time, manager. Please say something to her. The manager thought for a moment, then spoke slowly. No, I'll take responsibility here. You have an urgent matter, right? Yes, I replied confidently. So, why did you do that? Do what? Making a mess of Susie's backpack, then bringing her home. People saw it. He grimaced for a moment, then became defiant. Susie wasn't feeling well, so I brought her back, that's all. Then why were you at the amusement park? It's her first field trip to an amusement park in elementary school, right? I was just a little worried. That's a lie, isn't it? Why would it be? I just got a call from her teacher. You weren't alone, were you? Everyone in the office seemed even more agitated. There's no proof, right? Tom seemed determined to deny everything. That's when I decided to play the recording I had made previously, in front of everyone. Hey, what are you doing? I wanted to see if you could still be so composed after hearing this. I played the recording. It was as horrifying as ever. Words like terrible and worse could be heard from the crowd around us. Tom had no escape now. Is this true? No, yes. I was discussing a friend's problem. It's not like I planned to do anything to Susie. I couldn't help but smirk. But the word Susie isn't mentioned in this conversation, is it? Tom realized he had trapped himself. Unable to withstand the cold stares from those around, he suddenly began to apologize, changing his tune. I was just following orders. It's not my fault. It's my mother's. Orders? Yes, it's my mother's fault, not mine. I was shocked to learn that his mother had been involved in this, but it didn't excuse what Tom had done. As I was thinking about what to do next, my former manager made a suggestion. Just leave work early for today. This isn't a situation to work in, right? Don't come in until everything's resolved. It seemed like a good decision. Then let's go. Go where? Just come with me. I forcefully pulled Tom out of the office and headed to his parents' house. During the drive, Tom looked anxious, understanding what was about to happen. We finally arrived after about an hour's drive. I dragged a reluctant Tom out of the car and to the front door. Hello, his mother greeted us. It's been a while. Why are we here? We have an urgent matter to discuss, I said, heading into the living room. There, I found his father reading the newspaper. Hello, it's been a while. What brings you here so suddenly? There's something important you need to know, I replied. I made Tom sit down next to me and explained everything that happened today. You guys did all that? Wait a minute, that's just her fantasy, his father protested. I played the recording for his father too. So, what about this? Answer me, Tom. This was a conversation with my mother. Mindy and Susie weren't to my liking, so we thought to teach them a lesson. I just did what when mother told me to. I'm a victim too. Tom desperately pleaded with his father, but his father continued without batting an eyelid. Even if that's the case, you had the option to say no. By not doing so, you're equally guilty. And after all, you were the one who directly acted. Faced with this undeniable logic, Tom fell silent. Mom, what have you done? I did it for Tom and this family. Then the father-in-law, with a fury I had never seen before, bellowed, How can that be an excuse? What you two have done could leave a lifelong scar of terrible memories. The mother-in-law, taken aback by his fierce reprimand, couldn't muster a response. Get out, I said, leave this house. There won't be a second chance. But if you do that, what if Susie had been there? She would have undoubtedly burst into tears from the intensity of the moment. Mom, come on, Tom. Wait a moment. Tom was trying to hurriedly pull his mother away, wanting to leave the scene as quickly as possible. But I wasn't going to let them off that easily. I'm not done talking. I got a call from Susie's teacher. You weren't alone, were you? Someone saw you, right? You know about that too. I didn't do such a thing. Then prove it if you can. Dan. Looks like we have no choice but divorce, right? Tom was clearly not expecting me to say that. He was utterly hopeless. If that's the case, there's no need for me to hold back. Like I said before, you'll have to leave this house, and you're never crossing this threshold again. That's impossible. I'm sorry, but you'll have to accept it. It's all because of her. Don't blame me for everything. It's all your own doing. Eventually, Tom and his mother were disowned and kicked out of the house. She probably never thought it would come to this. They lost everything just because they couldn't stand us. What a pathetic mother and son! I think this should be enough. No, this is more than enough. My only worry is more about your wife than Tom. Leave her to me. She can't do anything now. You just focus on dealing with Tom. Yes, if you need anything, call me anytime. With that, I left my in-laws' house to pick up Susie. Mom, sorry to keep you waiting. It's okay. Let's go home. I took Susie and first headed to my parents' house. My mother was surprised but accepted everything after I explained the situation. Then I went to a lawyer's office to discuss divorcing Tom and his wrongdoings against Susie. I prepared the divorce papers and contacted Tom. The divorce papers will be arriving soon. Please take care of it. You're serious? Of course. I'm also going to ask for alimony. If you don't like it, prove your innocence. And I'm consulting a lawyer about what you did to Susie. Good luck with that. Hey, wait. I quickly ended the call. I was done dealing with a husband like that. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized, and I successfully claimed a substantial amount in alimony. As for his mother, you've caused us so much trouble. That's entirely your own fault. Maybe you should stop blaming others. Quiet. You and your daughter should go to hell. I'll return those words right back at you. As expected, she tried to contact me. She was speechless at my response. I barely held back my laughter and hung up, blocking her number. Months passed. How are things on your end? Susie and I are doing well. We'll visit you soon. That's good to hear. I look forward to it. From what I heard from my father-in-law, Tom and his mother were living together, still fighting over who was to blame. Such a hopeless pair. Well, they got what they deserved. Now it's just the two of us again. It's okay as long as I'm with you, Mom. Thank you. It was just Susie and me again, but it was for the best. Staying with a man like that would have been harmful to her upbringing. From now on, Susie and I will support each other and move forward together. Henceforth, my brother and his wife declared, "We'll manage the household independently, so find another place to live." My mother, aligning herself with their decision, treated me as an impediment. Do they comprehend who has been footing the bills for the house? I never anticipated such disrespect. In the recesses of my mind, I resolved to take certain actions. I go by the name Carrie, a 30-year-old woman. Currently, I reside in my parents' home after returning from college. Initially, I ventured into the corporate world to forge my path, but the challenges overwhelmed me, prompting my return home. While initially navigating unemployment, I explored work-from-home opportunities. Armed with a scientific background, I embarked on a freelance engineering career. Commencing with modest projects, the income was meager, yet the experience of working independently was profoundly meaningful. In stark contrast to conventional employment, I could generate ample income without excessive social interaction. As my confidence grew, so did my workload and earnings. Within a year, my income rivaled that of a regular corporate employee. However, the predicament lay in my parents' understanding, especially my mother's reluctance to embrace my work-from-home lifestyle. My father grasped my explanation, but my mother, rooted in traditional beliefs, harbored apprehensions about what she couldn't fathom. Despite my earnest attempts to elucidate, my mother persisted with questions like, "How long do you plan on staying home?" and insinuations about the legitimacy of my online work. Despite presenting evidence of client emails and salary statements, my mother remained unconvinced. She suspected it to be some shady business or involvement in a dubious religion, despite the consistent payments and the legitimacy of my job. Despite my detailed explanations, my mother remained steadfast in her skepticism. She continually expressed concerns about the possibility of relying on unemployment benefits, emphasizing their impermanence. Although I had contemplated living independently, my savings were not yet sufficient. Around that time, my father's health took a toll, with deteriorating legs and back necessitating nursing care. Facing an early retirement and sudden income loss, my father assured me that his pension would suffice. However, acknowledging my mother's spending habits, I questioned his ability to manage. His face wore the fatigue of anxiety about the uncertain future. My father had supported me through college and even when I returned home due to mental health challenges. The idea of leaving him alone and continuing to live independently troubled me. My mother, too, grappled with confusion over my father's sudden condition. Contemplating the situation, I felt a sense of responsibility and a desire to give back. Reassuring my father, I pledged to support the family from that point onward. He expressed surprise, doubting my income's adequacy, but I confidently showed him my stable financial situation. Grasping the reality, my father, who had always understood my circumstances, was taken aback by my newfound stability. Encouraged by his understanding, I offered to help with household expenses, medical bills, and other financial obligations. Each month, I transferred a certain amount to my father's bank account, shouldering a significant part of the financial burden. As my mother had been using my father's credit card, I created a new main card and provided her with a supplementary card. My father, mindful of saving money, urged my mother to follow suit. In response, my mother questioned whether I should be asked to leave the house. I pointed out my financial contributions and emphasized that it would be more challenging without my support. Skeptical, my mother remained unconvinced and suspicious of my assistance. It took my father's persuasion to finally gain her agreement, allowing me to continue living with them. Continuing my work and household responsibilities, I found my mother increasingly taking my assistance for granted. Her strictness intensified, with constant remarks about the speed of my chores. "Can't you finish your chores faster?" she would complain. I explained the challenge of multitasking while working, but she dismissed my concerns. The strain on my relationship with her became apparent, and it seemed irreparable. In contrast, my father, understanding my efforts, provided much-needed support. Despite this strained dynamic, we persevered in this manner for a year. After a year, my father's health took a sudden downturn, requiring hospitalization. Visiting him daily, I shared moments of concern and reassurance. Aware of the strain on me, my father expressed gratitude, acknowledging the difficulties in my relationship with my mother. As my father grappled with health issues, The already strained relationship between my mother and me deteriorated further. Despite feeling suffocated at times, I remained committed to supporting my family. Recollections of my mother's past efforts, especially during my student days, kept me steadfast in this commitment. However, a significant shift occurred when my mother welcomed my brother Kevin and his wife Mary. Their unexpected arrival brought an abrupt change to my living situation. My brother explained their decision, stating they would be living in the house from now on to ease the burden on me. I was taken aback, and my mother seemed to avoid eye contact. While my brother and his wife claimed their intention was to support me, a hidden meaning lingered in their words. My mother, expressing gratitude, subtly hinted at my need to contribute more to the household. Despite the surprise, I learned that my brother, a graduate of a prestigious college, had joined a reputable company. The unexpected turn of events left me questioning the true motives behind my brother and his wife's presence in our home. Certainly, he must have been earning a substantial salary, but I too was diligently pursuing my own endeavors. I wondered if they could manage without my contributions. Transitioning into a new life at home with my brother and his wife proved to be more demanding than anticipated. "Wake up, Perry, make breakfast," my brother's wife hollered, banging on my door. Fully awake and already engrossed in my work as a morning person, I explained that I was already up and working. Despite my work commitments, they insisted that I prepare breakfast. "Get on with it and get breakfast ready," she demanded. I reluctantly forced myself to assist, considering our family's usual morning freedom. Typically, we enjoyed meals at our own pace, especially when my mother and brother's wife were present. I presumed it was customary for the wife to prepare breakfast for her husband. However, my sister-in-law insisted on cooperation, and I reluctantly joined them in the kitchen. Despite my efforts, their dissatisfaction was evident. "Is this what you prepared for breakfast?" "This isn't enough," they complained. I had meticulously crafted a breakfast plate featuring soft scrambled eggs, a refreshing lettuce salad, fresh buttered toast, and a succulent sausage, thinking it would be well received. However, it seemed I had missed something. "You don't have to eat it," I retorted. But their surprise was palpable. Their reaction turned confrontational, questioning my attitude and who I thought I was. My brother, often condescending, mocked me, likely influenced by our mother. Despite explaining my work commitments, they dismissed it. "What kind of work is that? Are you crazy?" they exclaimed. Frustrated by their lack of understanding and the impact on my work, I packed my laptop, ignored their protests, and left the house. As I departed, my brother's voice echoed in the background, demanding to know where I was going. Ignoring the question, I proceeded to my father's hospital room. As I hurried into my father's hospital room, his surprised gaze met mine. "Carrie, what's wrong?" "You seem flustered," he observed. I recounted the recent incident, and my father, wearing a surprised expression, responded, "I didn't know they were. I'm sorry, Carrie. Don't worry about it. You can choose your own way of life." Feeling lost, I expressed concern that my mother might feel more comfortable if my brother Kevin were at home. However, my father reassured me, "You don't need to be in a place where you don't feel comfortable. All I want is for you to live happily. Live your life the way you want to live." Encouraged by my father's words, I decided to leave home. Upon returning that evening, I encountered a tense scene resembling a movie. The serious faces of my mother, brother, and sister-in-law greeted me. My brother accused me of not being at work, forcing him to take the day off. I inwardly questioned the responsibility of easily taking time off work. Their voices escalated, culminating in my brother demanding, "Get out of here. From now on, the three of us will live together. If you don't want to stay, please leave. We don't need an overbearing presence like you to support us." It was a shocking statement, and I replied in surprise, "Why?" Ignoring my protests, my brother and his wife insisted on my departure, declaring that I was no longer needed in the absence of our father. My mother, aligning with their sentiments, regarded me as a hindrance. The frustration intensified as they dismissed my involvement in the family's finances and prioritized their own concerns. Enraged by their insensitivity, I devised a plan. Initially, I transferred the money linked to the credit card my mother used daily to another account under my management. This subtle move aimed to surprise my mother when she could no longer access her credit card. I initiated a money transfer from my father's account, a crucial pillar supporting the family's financial stability. However, I ensured that only my father's medical expenses could be withdrawn from this separate account, unbeknownst to my mother. Consequently, a significant financial burden now rested on my brother and his wife. Though unaware of the intricate details of my brother's income, I was certain that he would feel the weight more than ever. After completing the necessary formalities, I gathered my belongings and declared my departure, saying, "I'm leaving this place." To my surprise, my mother, brother, and sister-in-law, who had been relentlessly harassing me, looked taken aback. Their astonishment revealed that they hadn't anticipated my decisive action, although, from the expressions on their faces, it seemed they were secretly enjoying the moment. As I announced my departure, they belittled me, expressing their relief. "You're finally leaving. We've never dealt with such a troublesome person. You're not coming back, are you?" In response, I asserted, "Of course not. Don't contact me." They smiled as I left the house, but I couldn't help but wonder what they would think after I had left. Embarking on a new life in a tranquil environment, I found solace and the freedom to enjoy my own time. Refreshed and focused, I immersed myself in my work. However, as expected, a call from my brother disrupted the peace. "I told you not to contact me. What's wrong?" I questioned. His voice conveyed surprise and urgency as he inquired about my involvement in the family's financial transactions. Confirming my role, I reminded him that I had mentioned my work several times, but neither he nor our mother had believed me. Expressing confusion, he admitted, "Well, Mom said a lot of things, and I was a little confused." Acknowledging that it wasn't my fault, he revealed a financial predicament. With my absence, they struggled to manage expenses, and my mother's spending had exacerbated the situation. Though sympathetic, I asserted, "I was able to support you in many ways because I was at home. I'm not there anymore, so you have to handle it, Carrie." I found myself in an unexpected situation when my brother contacted me, urgently requesting assistance in transferring money to his bank account. Perplexed, I asked if he was joking, given that he worked for a sizable company. However, to my surprise, my brother confessed that he had been fired from his job due to a significant mistake. His revelation left me speechless, and I realized that he might have returned to our parents' house assuming there was enough money available. Perhaps he relied on the notion of a stable pension following our father's retirement. Wanting to enlighten my brother about my financial contributions to the household, I found amusement in the thought of his astonishment upon learning the truth. His wife and my mother joined the plea for financial aid, claiming they were on the verge of running out of savings. My mother even revealed that my father refused to contribute to household finances any longer. In response, I firmly declared that I had supported them enough, urging them to work hard and support themselves. I severed communication, emphasizing my decision to distance myself from their financial struggles. My father, recognizing the strain in his relationship with my mother, consulted a lawyer and opted for a quieter life in a different place. While I continued to visit my father daily, a friend shared my brother's recent struggles. He had moved into a modest apartment, leading a frugal life. My mother, once a homemaker, faced challenges in her sudden job, while my brother found it difficult to adapt to the opinions of younger colleagues. Despite his wife's efforts, she succumbed to the pressure and departed, leaving my brother and mother to navigate their challenges together. Concerns lingered for my mother, who maintained her habit of overspending, accumulating debts. However, I recognized my limitations in offering assistance. Focused on my own endeavors, I worked diligently in a comfortable living space, gradually accruing more resources. Contemplating new ventures, I aimed to spend quality time with my cheerful father, appreciating every moment with him. 10 years had passed since my mother-in-law became confined to a wheelchair. Regular hospital checkups and physical therapy were routine for her. On this particular day, she was undergoing tests, and I found myself waiting in the hospital's waiting room before her therapy session. In the midst of my thoughts, a doctor suddenly pulled on my arm, a deep concern etched on his face. "I'm going to speak with her primary doctor about this," he announced. Gently releasing my arm, I observed that the doctor in front of me was a man, whereas my mother-in-law's primary doctor was a woman. Confused about the need for a doctor who wasn't her primary to discuss her case, I questioned the situation. The male doctor hastily grabbed my hands, realizing my suspicion. "There's something neither your mother-in-law nor her primary doctor should hear. That's why I only want to tell you," he explained. Intrigued, I took a step closer to him. "My name is Julie, a 37-year-old office worker. Recently, I've been working remotely for a small and medium-sized company. However, the doctor's revelation seemed unrelated to my mother-in-law's condition." He continued, "When I was a child, my mother left home, and I was raised by my father in a single-parent family. Despite my father's warnings about my mother being a spendthrift, I never felt lonely due to the love he showered on me. I eventually went to college and found a job, leading an independent life. 14 years ago, I married Mike. His mother warmly welcomed me into their family, treating me like her own daughter. However, tragedy struck when my mother-in-law was involved in a car accident, leaving her wheelchair-bound. Despite various caregivers, her condition deteriorated, and she expressed loneliness, prompting us to move back to care for her temporarily. As my husband and I visited her, she seemed relieved and began to smile. However, when we mentioned returning to work, her demeanor changed, and she didn't allow us to leave. My mother-in-law pleaded with desperation, her voice nearly hysterical. "No, please, both of you don't leave. Don't leave me alone." Attempting to calm her, I assured, "Mike really needs to return to his job, but I'll talk to my company and see if I can stay here a bit longer. I'll come back as often as I can. Just hang in there for me, Julie." With tearful eyes, she implored, "If you can stay, that would be great. Mike, you better come back, okay? I'll be waiting." After losing her husband, she had endured loneliness for a long time. Our sudden notification of departure likely triggered anxiety and confusion. Her weakened state over the past week heightened her fear of facing loneliness. After discussions with my company, I decided to switch to remote work and operate from home temporarily to care for my mother-in-law. However, her aversion to being alone persisted. Even when I worked from home, she clung to me relentlessly. I couldn't let her be seen by my coworkers, and no matter how close we might be, she'd always be waiting where she could see me. It felt like I was under constant surveillance, leading to a growing sense of resentment. Meanwhile, Mike would come home on weekends and take days off during the week to assist with her care. Despite ongoing physical therapy, her condition showed no improvement, preventing my return to the office. Our personal lives became dominated by her care, leaving no time for just the two of us. The 10th year of this lifestyle marked her 65th birthday, and with each passing year, her dependency on us grew. My husband, unable to bear the situation, reduced his visits year by year. Even if I stepped out for a few minutes, my mother-in-law would panic, insisting I take her with me. Calming her down took ages, and I couldn't go back to our own home. Yet, I couldn't abandon the woman who had welcomed me without judgment or prejudice from a single-parent household. Then, a pivotal moment arrived. During a routine checkup, I accompanied my mother-in-law to the hospital as always. Dr. Mia, a woman in her 30s, had been her trusted doctor for a decade. When my mother-in-law went into the examination room, a young male doctor named Ryan approached me. Startled, he said, "Excuse me, you're Sally's daughter, right?" Sally was my mother-in-law's first name. Ryan explained that he recently joined the hospital and worked in the same department as Dr. Mia. Intrigued, I replied, "Yes, I'm her daughter-in-law. What's going on?" Ryan apologized for the sudden approach and requested a moment to discuss something about my mother-in-law. Curious, I agreed, realizing her appointment probably wasn't over yet. Agreeing to Dr. Ryan's request, he led me to a small private consultation room not far from the examination area. Motioning for me to sit, he took a seat across a small desk, fixing his gaze directly into my eyes. "You're currently living with Sally to take care of her, right?" Dr. Ryan inquired. "Oh yes, that's correct," I replied. I explained that for the past decade, I had been working from my mother-in-law's home while tending to her needs. The increased dependency had left me with little personal time, causing my husband to avoid coming home. Listening intently, Dr. Ryan nodded. I found myself expressing all the frustrations that had built up. Apologizing for the venting, I remarked, "I'm sorry for going on like this." Dr. Ryan reassured, "It's completely all right. Anyway, 10 years, that's quite a commitment." His face turned thoughtful, and then he looked at me with a serious expression. However, before his words could reach me, a scream from my mother-in-law pierced the air. Both Dr. Ryan and I rushed to the examination room, only to witness an unthinkable scene that left me speechless. Dr. Ryan urged, "You should leave that house as soon as possible. Get away from your mother-in-law." Suppressing my anger, I nodded, and without heading to my mother-in-law, I went straight to the police. Despite skepticism, they promised to investigate. I hastily packed my belongings from the house, the disturbing image from the hospital replaying in my mind. An hour later, while still packing, I explained everything to my husband over a call. Numerous calls and messages from my mother-in-law flooded my phone, but I continued to ignore them. In the evening, my husband and the police arrived, and that's when I finally answered a call from my mother-in-law. Angrily, she demanded to know why I had left her behind. With a firm attitude, I informed her, "I realized I don't need to live with you anymore. I'm going back to the house where my husband is." Indignant, my mother-in-law ranted and raved. With a sigh, I responded, "Why don't you just walk back home from the hospital? After all, your legs are fine, so you don't need a wheelchair or care, right?" As I continued explaining, my mother-in-law let out a short scream, conveying her extreme upset. I could vividly imagine her emotional turmoil as I disclosed the revelations I had discovered. I shared with her the unsettling information that Dr. Ryan had conveyed and the first-hand experience of witnessing an unexpected turn of events. Dr. Ryan had revealed that recent tests showed no physical issues with the muscles or nerves in her body. Instead, he speculated that her belief in her inability to walk might be psychological. The power of such beliefs could be formidable, and Dr. Ryan considered both physical and psychological care for her legs. In his efforts to include me as a family member in the care plan, he had called me over. However, it turned out that my presence wasn't necessary. During our conversation, a scream echoed from the examination room, my mother-in-law's. Dr. Ryan and I hurriedly went to check the room, finding her gesturing as if swatting away an insect. To our surprise, it was a false alarm. She had mistaken dust for a bug. In a surreal moment, she picked up the motionless dust and walked to the trash can, revealing that she could walk without the need for a wheelchair or cane, moving with astonishing ease. Dr. Ryan pushed me to the corner of the hallway, and we observed silently as my mother-in-law, seemingly unaware of our presence, calmly returned to her wheelchair. Dr. Mia entered the room, exchanged an envelope with my mother-in-law, and, acting nonchalantly, pushed her wheelchair toward the physical therapy facility. Stunned by the unfolding events, I stood frozen until Dr. Ryan gently shook me out of my daze. He had advised me to leave my mother-in-law's house immediately, and I hurriedly packed, desperate to escape this surreal revelation. Throughout my narrative, my mother-in-law remained silent. Finally, with an audible sigh over the phone, she began to speak, perhaps realizing she couldn't evade the truth any longer. Acknowledging the car accident that initially left her wheelchair-bound, she admitted that thanks to treatments, she could walk with the aid of a cane about 5 years after the incident. Listening in disbelief over the speaker, my husband and I were stunned. What puzzled us most was the purpose of the 12 years we had spent caring for her. She expressed her fear that once we discovered she could walk, we would leave her side. Tearfully, she admitted, "Julie, Mike, I couldn't bear that thought. I feared losing you both, and that's why I kept up the pretense. I truly love you like my own daughter." My mother-in-law had often expressed her loneliness after Mike moved out and my husband passed away. Despite her repeated pleas, our hearts remained unmoved. While we understood her feelings, we believed the way she went about it was wrong. Apologizing, we explained, "We can't be by your side any longer. Sorry, Mom, Mike, but the way you went about it was wrong." I continued, expressing my own sentiments. "I've been taking care of you for the past 10 years while working. My colleagues have experienced promotions, marriages, and childbirth. Because of your care, I couldn't have a child of my own. I had almost given up on having kids, but now I feel like the past 10 years are in vain. Why did you deceive us to the point of having us care for you? We would have visited you during our time off. Why did it have to be this way?" Though I didn't mean to blame her, tears welled up as the words poured out. With my husband supporting me, I conveyed that I no longer intended to care for her. We decided to leave her house that day and cut off all contact. Despite her protests and hysteria, we hung up, contacting the police, who assured us they would begin an investigation. 2 months later, while at a hospital with my husband, Dr. Mia, my mother-in-law's supposed doctor, rushed over to us. We remembered her with fuller cheeks, but now she looked gaunt and fatigued. Curious about her presence, we reluctantly listened as she approached with a desperate look. Dr. Mia revealed that she knew all along that my mother-in-law's leg was healed. She had accepted money to provide a false disability diagnosis. The money was in the envelope she received from my mother-in-law that day. Due to a recent complaint by Dr. Ryan, the hospital discovered her forgery and fired her immediately. Furthermore, she faced potential arrest for fabricating medical records, and her medical license was likely to be revoked. Incredibly, Dr. Mian insisted that the money wasn't an appreciation gift from my mother-in-law, but hush money from my husband and me. She alleged that we plotted to scam disability pension by making my mother-in-law disabled. However, there was no evidence to support these claims. It was shocking to realize that Dr. Mia, facing legal trouble, had shifted the blame onto us. In disbelief, I responded, "What are you talking about? We haven't done anything like that." Dr. Mia persisted, claiming it was the truth. "I'm going to tell the police everything." Dr. Mia shouted, her eyes red with rage, making us turn pale. While her claims lacked evidence, proving our innocence would be challenging, and the mere thought terrified us. My husband and I were on the verge of tears when a woman approached us, standing between Dr. Mia and us, shielding us from her wrath. Aren't you the head doctor here? I urgently need to talk to you," she said. Upon seeing the woman, Dr. Mia turned deathly pale, quickly putting on a forced smile and approaching her with flattery. The woman glaring at Dr. Mia was the head doctor of the hospital, and she was Yvonne, my mother. Yes, my mother, from whom I was separated as a child due to her divorce, was now a doctor and held a prominent position in a major university hospital. She was one of the people advocating for revoking Dr. Mia's medical license upon learning about her misdeeds. "Oh, you're related. In that case, could you please just hear me out?" Dr. Mia begged, trying to invoke my mother's sympathy. However, my mother shook her head, stating, "Don't mess with me. You and Sally have been deceiving the hospital and the authorities for 10 years, keeping my daughters confined at home. Sally kept them at home because she was afraid to be alone. You, on the other hand, funded your debts from your nightlife with Sally's disability benefits. You frauds need to face appropriate punishment and make amends." Dr. Mia's plea was abruptly dismissed, and realizing there was nothing she could do, she slumped to the ground in despair. Whispers and stares from those around us focused on her, and we couldn't help but watch with indescribable feelings. Suddenly, a strong pull came from behind, startling me. I turned around to find, astonishingly, my mother-in-law standing firmly beside my father. My father angrily shouted at my mother, demanding, "What have you done to Julie?" I was taken aback, wondering why my father was there and why with my mother-in-law. When I heard that Sally was looking for Julie, I wanted to help. You moved to a place without telling me, and I thought I would meet you if I followed Dr. Mia, my father explained. The reason I hadn't told my father our whereabouts wasn't just because of the family connection between my mother-in-law and him. Since my mother-in-law's car accident, I had asked my father to look after her when I was out for work. During those times, they became close and started dating secretly behind our backs. I had found out about this last year, suspecting their relationship when I saw them talking closely at my in-laws' house. Give Julie back. I won't let you take her away, my father yelled at my mother, an intensity I'd never seen before. Brushing off his grip, I shouted, "Stop it. I know all the stories you told me about Mom are lies." My father's face went pale at my revelation. Since the divorce, he had been feeding me lies about my mother to ensure I didn't want to meet her. The stories about her treating him like a slave or leaving him for a younger man were all false. My mother, an accomplished doctor, always had a busy schedule, and my father knew this when they married. However, after I started daycare, his attitude shifted drastically. Blaming her for our lack of family vacations, he decided to divorce her, claiming she wasn't a good mother. On my 4th birthday, my father suddenly took me and left home. In reality, it was him who left, not my mother. Following the divorce settlement, even though my mother had a decent income, she couldn't guarantee time for raising me. My father was nominated to live with me. However, my mother had been sending a substantial amount in child support every month. I didn't know this until I met my mother. Even after becoming a single parent, my father ensured I didn't want to see my mother by portraying her in a negative light with false stories. It seemed that my mother wanted to see me, but most of the time, she was overseas for training or research. She kept sending me letters from overseas that my father kept refusing, hiding the letters. There were times when it seemed they might meet, but something always came up. Either my mother got an emergency call at the hospital, or my father would come up with an excuse to cancel at the last minute. I had been told since I was young that my mother couldn't be reached, or that no one knew where she was. It turned out that was a lie. The reason my father could afford to travel once every 2 months and pay for my high school and college tuition was thanks to the child support money from my mother. Our comfortable life was all thanks to her. So the story of my father working late nights was also a sham to make it seem like he was struggling with parenting. He'd work a regular 9-to-5 job, then spend nights somewhere, coming home only in the early morning. When my father yelled, "Where's your proof?" my mother calmly showed him a mobile bank app, saying, "This is how much I've transferred to you over the years for Julie, and your company unusually has strict policies against second jobs, so it was impossible. I can confirm with them if you'd like." My father crumbled, and my mother-in-law tried to comfort him. Seeing my father like this made me realize that I had been lied to my entire life. While the truth was shocking, I felt more anger than anything else. I said coldly, "Thanks for everything, Dad, but it's time to say goodbye." Saying that, my father clung to me, and my mother-in-law said, "Julie, your dad did everything he thought was best for you." No, he did it for himself. He lied about struggling as a single parent, using the money from my mom. And you lied to my husband and me, trying to bind us to your home. Both of you are a perfect match for your lies. Please stay away from us. With no excuses left, my father and my mother-in-law were speechless. Ignoring their stunned faces, we left the hospital with my mother. Later, Dr. Mia was arrested and lost her medical license. She had forged medical documents multiple times and was sentenced to imprisonment. Additionally, the hospital she worked for is suing her for defamation. My mother-in-law had bribed a doctor for a fake diagnosis, leading to her having to pay back all the pension money she received with interest. She's also facing fraud charges, as informed by the police. Mike says he's cut ties with her, so he's not bothered about her future. I'm trying not to care either. As for me, I realized I had been somewhat dependent on my mother-in-law. Feeling betrayed sent me into a mental spiral, so I've been seeing a therapist at the hospital where my mother works. Regarding my reunion with my mother, when I was getting a referral at my previous hospital, the doctor's name I was referred to was the same as my mother's. To my surprise, it was actually her. My mother was skeptical when she saw a patient named me, but during the consultation, she realized it was me. Our reunion can only be described as miraculous. I can't be treated by my mother due to hospital rules, but she supports me from behind the scenes. I've been back to my job at the office while still attending therapy. When visiting Dr. Ryan, who informed me of the truth about my mother-in-law, I heard that he and my husband were old high school buddies. We now often hang out with Ryan visiting our place, and everything feels like old times. It may be hard for me to forget how I was tied up by my mother-in-law and my father. But my husband, my mother, and Dr. Ryan always encourage me to take things easy and do what I want. Thanks to that, I'm planning trips with my friends or going to cafes by myself.